Good morning, everybody. As you come in and begin to get settled and stuff, by my clock, we're going to start in 9 minutes. We have a pretty busy day today, so get at the coffee, the pastries, drinks, water. If there's anything else, ask us. We might have it, but just help yourself. Are you all ready to get started? Did somebody say no? Do what? Okay. We're going to try to stay on schedule today. The commissioner's office has still been communicating back and forth, and so we may be trying to open some space to make room for the commissioner to come down. So I don't really know how that's going to go. So we're going to try to get started on time and stay on time, and all that kind of stuff. Any operational questions before we get started? Just help yourself to the food and drinks and that kind of stuff. And if you need anything, let us know. And if not, we're going to get started with the first presentation. Fuan and Mindy Nobles are both program directors in AQW.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Good morning, I'm Fuan Ning. My co-presenter, Mindy Nobles, and I, as Gary has introduced us, we are program directors in the Division of Academic Quality and Workforce. Part of our responsibilities in the division is grant management. And before coming to the coordinating board, Mindy and I both had experience with grant implementation and development. We have worked with federal grants, private, nonprofit funders, and Mindy had direct experience with state-level grants. In our current roles as grant managers at the THECB, we oversee quite a few grant programs between the two of us. I have under me different initiatives in the Nursing Innovation Grant Program and the Minority Health Research and Education Grant Program. I also provide oversight for the Emergency and Trauma Care Education Partnership Program, and Mindy has quite a few as well. TSTEM, is it on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And I manage the TSTEM grant, and I also work with the Perkins grants. I manage 23 Perkins basic grants and manage one or more leadership grants every year. I've additionally got some grant writing background back there in the day, and have worked on grants at the institutions I've been with in the past. So that's my background.
She's very experienced, as you can tell. And there are, of course, other
Experience comes with age.
Yes, that's not what I meant, but that would do. And of course, there are other grant programs managed by additional staff members at the coordinating board. Among all the grants at the coordinating board, we have quite a few that two-year institutions are eligible to apply for. And so our presentation today will discuss tips and strategies for crafting quality, fundable grant applications. And we cannot stress the word quality enough. It is absolutely essential when we are in the process of evaluating the received grant applications. And we know many of you in attendance today have experience and expertise in securing grant funding. So we will try to only hit the key points today. But as you will see, we have built the slides with more elaborated information than just headings. Our hope is that the slides can be forwarded and disseminated to faculty and staff members interested in seeking grant funding. And the information will still make sense to them without the audio file of today's presentation to go with it. Now, to get a comprehensive list of grants available at the THECB, the quickest way is to follow the two links we have included on this slide. The links are hyperlinked, and they will take you straight to the corresponding web pages. We also encourage folks to sign up for e-updates. This is one way we announce available grant opportunities. Among the grants at the THECB, we have state or federal dollars as the funding sources. And in terms of grant award making methodology, we have those grants, they are competitive. And we also have those that are based on allocations using eligibility criteria and formulas. But regardless of the type of the grant, most likely there is going to be an application process that institutions will have to complete in order to seek grant funding. And most likely, there is going to be a request for applications, or RFA, for the grant program. As I mentioned, the focus of the presentation today will be on tips and strategies. We will have generally applicable information for grant application development, and we plan to also focus on grant programs that require the development of a project where the applicant will have to specify the scope, implementation plans, and whatever else that would fit within the intent of the RFA. With that, I turn it over to Mindy, who will talk about why and what to pay attention to in the RFA.
Thank you, Fuan, and good morning. Across grant programs administered by the Coordinating Board, we receive a range of applications. The best applications are kind of inspiring. They remind you of the public benefit that can come from good use of public dollars. And I see Don Perry nodding back there. You've got a little bit of experience with that, don't you, Don? Yes, okay. Sometimes grants are poor, very poor, or applications rather, are very poor. And we always, in reviewing them, kind of come down to three primary causes. One, lack of familiarity with the RFA. Two, the project itself that you're asking for money for has not been adequately conceived, poor planning. Or three, the application itself is not well developed. You may have a good plan, but our only evidence of that plan is what you've written in the RFA. Now, I'll touch a bit on that last item right here, though Fuan's going to go into it further. And then I'll proceed to the first thing I listed, which is lack of familiarity with the RFA. All I'll say about writing here is that the more eyes on it before you submit it, the better. And it's not just about the P's and Q's of writing conventions. It has to do with, you may think it's said adequately, but somebody else is going to read it and say, well, you didn't emphasize this. And sure enough, you thought you did, but you didn't. So I can't emphasize strongly enough to have enough people involved in the planning and internal application review process to get that application thoroughly developed. But let me turn now to the RFA. I'm going to make the case that you should know your RFA well. And three reasons. Here's why. One, this is the kind of critical information contained in the RFA, whether or not you're eligible to apply for the grant. Instructions for completing the application, how it will be reviewed and considered for funding, the contact information should you have questions, grant management requirements. These are pretty self-evident, but we do receive applications that have failed to consider one or more of these things. Two, even if it's a formula funding grant or an ongoing grant that you apply for year after year, that RFA will have changed from the previous year. You can't assume that just because you know the application or you know the program, you know what's in the RFA. Changes in state and federal requirements force changes in the RFA. And two, a situation may come up in a program year that causes us to modify the next year's RFA to make it crystal clear that something's allowed as a cost only certain conditions or is not allowable as a cost period. So even year to year, you need to read your RFA and absorb it. And here's the final reason. The RFA, upon award of your grant, becomes a major part of your contract. Every paragraph of an RFA is legally binding upon an awarded applicant. It's good not to be surprised. And I'll go on to talk about item 2 that I mentioned, planning. The planning that should precede a grant application. Now, you all are some administrators with some pretty good background. You know that planning generally starts the year before, or 2 years before, or 3 years before for a big project. For a grant application, it should start well enough in advance that you've got enough people on board and everybody knows what the score is, so that you have thought your project through well in advance. I'm going to point back to the RFA. It provides a conceptual framework. It provides the bones of your planning. The purpose and overarching goals of the program, in other words, the public benefit that should derive from this grant offering, should form the framework for your project overall. The expected outcomes stated in the RFA for a successful program awarded under the grant should form the basis of your own evaluation plan for your own success. And two, good planning gets you ready for the common elements of every grant application. The description, in other words, the narrative, it's often called, you should make the case in that narrative for what you want to do, what you see your challenges and needs to be in getting that done, how you're going to use these funds to meet those challenges, and the public benefit that's going to derive from it. You should also be prepared to summarize in the narrative your project goals and objectives, your implementation plan, and your evaluation plan. Believe it or not, we get applications that look as though somebody's thinking that through while they're writing it. That's never a recipe for success. You should be aware also, and I'm sure you are, that each one of these three that I've just clicked through, goals, plan for implementation, and evaluation plan, will often require their own detailed development in separate sections. And finally, your successful application should follow the requirements for form and content as you explain your plan. And I'll turn it back over to Fuan to talk about the process. Pardon? Please step to the microphone.
Please don't step on your
Pick that up.
paper. Gary just told us that we need to hurry, so I am just gonna continue talking while Mindy's gathering her paper. So once you have a grant you're interested in, as Mindy mentioned, what might the application process actually look like, particularly in terms of the initial planning? And this is going to be one of the slides that will be particularly applicable for grants requiring some sort of project development. To begin the process, likely you will produce an inventory of what the institution is currently doing and offering while noting the needs and challenges faced by the institution. And Mindy has referred to the RFA as a framework for your application. And so the purpose and the goal of the RFA should point you to which program or programs you want to focus on at your institution, and likely which students to target in your grant application. And in order to improve your current practices and sustain any kind of impact achieved through such work, you will likely need to think about what kind of resources will be needed to implement the project. After you have some ideas, you want to work out the details and connections to the RFA. In terms of the level of details to include, the rule of thumb will be not to leave any of the grant reviewers wondering and wanting more information. And it's always a good idea throughout the process to constantly examine the connection and alignment between your proposed project and the RFA. This is really fairly similar to writing an academic paper. We were coming up with this analogy as we were preparing for the presentation. You have your existing knowledge and interests. And just like in the case of the RFA, you have instructions and parameters, in this case set by the professor for your writing assignment. Most likely, you're going to do some research on the topic or topics of interest to you, trying to narrow things down, while all the time thinking about whether your planned paper will be a good fit for the assignment. And then you likely will produce an outline for your key arguments and work out the connections among those arguments, again, thinking about whether this is a good fit for the assignment. Maybe you will brainstorm with a peer, but definitely have a peer review your work. Maybe an English major will be awesome for the purpose, or go into the Writing Center for a thorough review of your work. And so for grants, involvement across the institution facilitates adequate review for clarity. Just like going to a Writing Center, and it also ensures well-rounded planning, making sure that when you are considering factors and needed resources in order to implement the project, you will have a thorough picture of what's actually required. Here's a visual representation of the process. First, you have the needs at the institution. Then you have the proposed project. And of course, you have the goal and the purpose of the RFA. The more overlap the three elements are, the higher the quality of the application. And this is important because ultimately, we want to make an impact on the students, and if possible, an impact on the local community and across the state through possible replication of your funded project. Mindy will now talk more about the characteristics of good, strong planning for the grant application.
Thank you, Fuan. And I'll just kind of click through this quickly. I prepared a version of this for the Perkins orientation this summer. when good planning is taking place, this is what we kind of see evidenced in the application. We see a process driven by a desire to improve the public benefit, improvement, good performance. Weak planning, we see a process driven by a desire to stretch the institutional budget, maybe. We don't see much inspiration. We see a need for funding this grant, but not inspiration. Strong planning, the application shows us a coherent plan coordinated across the institution. There's adequate buy-in at all levels and by all parties. Weak planning, especially in formula grants that are refunded from year to year, may look like a collection of unmet needs and political decisions. It may look like, to use a popular political phrase lately, a basket of miscellany. You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? Strong planning, we see a commitment demonstrated by administration, faculty, and staff. Everybody's on board. Weak planning, we kind of see an absence of engagement by the institution as a body. We also, in a competitive grant particularly, see a lack of sustainability beyond the grant. The sustainability plan should not be a version of, if it works, we'll keep doing it. What we like to see in a sustainability plan, and I think this is worth lingering on for a second, is some evidence, some statement of your idea for how what you're developing with this grant program will serve your institution and your constituency beyond the grant. And we like to see some forethought about how you will absorb the costs, whether it be through increased tuition, through the program, or whatever. We like to see those two things in a sustainability plan. It doesn't have to be fully developed, but it should at least be a conception that you're already on. Finally, compliance with RFA requirements. Hit that again and again. If we can't fund a non-compliant application. In weak planning, we see lack of familiarity. And Fuan, I'll give it back to you.
All right, now the lecture again. Beyond your initial planning for grant application development, you start thinking about your audience. Again, going back to the analogy of writing an academic paper. Keep in mind the perspective of the evaluator of your work, of course. And grant reviewers could include content experts, but it is important to make sure grant administrators who are coordinating board staff members will be able to understand your proposed project using their extensive knowledge of education and quality. In general, reviewers look for whether the application addresses the goals and intent of the RFA. Is there good, clear writing in the application? Is the proposed plan sound and reasonably ambitious? We want institutions to demonstrate ambitious goals, but we also want projects that can be implemented and completed, leading to improvement and making an impact. And then, when reviewers take all the information included in the application together, do they see the funding request as justified? The specific review criteria will likely be published in the RFA, the request for applications, and it is essential for such information to guide your grant application development. It's also especially critical for competitive grants, for grant applications to move beyond the initial review and into the possible revise and resubmit phase, and to be recommended to the board for final review and application. In a nutshell, the reviewers need the 3 C's: clarity, coherence, and confidence. Grant reviewers need to have enough confidence that the proposed project will be successful. As you can probably imagine, for them to have that level of confidence, clarity, and coherence will be of optimal importance. Justification. It is a term that we use much in the grant review process, and it's a concept, again, with really strong implications for competitive grants. Primarily, we look at justifications for the needs and strategies included in the application. And justification could be provided through research-based evidence from likely a literature review process. It can also be justified through institutional, local data, and contextual information. But again, most importantly, the information included in the application will have to indicate a good fit with the RFA. In terms of justification for the funding request, we look for alignment within the application with the project design, the goals, the activities, and of course, with the RFA. And a justified funding request is also one that does not indicate funding substitution. The proposed budget should not be to be purposed for the use of replacing what the institution has already budgeted for. And with that, and I'll turn it over to Mindy, who will talk about the grant budget development.
Budgets. Gee, this is the most interesting part. Every line item in your budget should be amply justified elsewhere in your application, in the narrative, in your goals and objectives. The more significant the budget item, the more amply it should be justified in your application. Every line item in your budget should supplement and not supplant. That's kind of a slippery term, and there's always lots of debate about what is supplementing and what is supplanting. I'll just linger on it for a second and say, in general, supplanting means to replace or take the place of. Supplementing means to add to or to build upon. Under no circumstances can you prepare a budget that in whole or in part substitutes for something you have already budgeted for or are already expending funds on. That is supplanting. Whether it be state or federal dollars, you cannot do that. On the other hand, building on something you're already doing, stretching it beyond your budgetary limits now to make something new and better and different, a new program or an addition to an existing program, that's supplementing, that's encouraged. Finally, your budget should be RFA compliant. Do I sound like a broken record? Don't ask for something the RFA says you can't have. Observe restrictions on admin costs. Follow the required calculations. Use the calculations required and the definitions stipulated in the RFA. And stay within allowed parameters on travel costs. Follow state limits, follow the GSA, General Service Administration guidelines on that. And I'll finally say every significant item in your budget needs to be included somewhere in your narrative and in your timeline. Set yourself an accountability timeline for expending funds in a timely manner. And then use the budget forms and so on that we provide. Fuan, back to you.
Gary has just told us that we have 3 more minutes left. So now onto the evaluation plan. I'll be quick. The RFA should provide guidelines for what to include in your evaluation of the success of the project, but it is the responsibility of the applicant to identify the key indicators of project success. A good evaluation plan will include both formative and summative components. And then the phrase key indicators, sometimes you hear it referred to as performance measures or metrics. Of course, you want to pay attention, again, to what's required in the RFA. And a good evaluation plan should have metrics that ensures coherence in the application and alignment to the RFA. The metrics should be both meaningful and measurable. We often get metrics that indicate task completion, for example, the number of equipment purchased with the grant funds. More meaningfully, we would probably like to see student outcomes after the purchased equipment is available for their use. Other than being measurable, the metrics should also point to the most relevant data that can be collected within the grant period. I work with a lot of health professions degree programs, and I often get metrics that include student actual performance on the licensure exams, which will be likely beyond the grant period. why it's important for the institution to continue monitoring such performance. But more feasibly for grant application, it's probably better to include benchmarks that will help predict student performance on such licensure exams. And we want to say that at the end of the grant period, it's possible, Mindy pointed this out, that it's possible that your final data will still be rolling in, and such data should be just in time for the final report submission, which is usually 1 to 2 months after the grant period ends. And if you need more time, contact the KHECB key staff to request for a reasonable amount of additional time for the completion of the report. Mindy is now going to talk about what should happen after a grant application receives funding.
And I'll be brief here. Smooth planning facilitates easy implementation, or at least doable implementation. And it matters because it increases your chance of getting funding in the future. We now at the coordinating board are required to do a risk assessment as part of recommending an application for funding. And here we go. If you've done your planning well and you've gotten funded, good institutional implementation will follow through on the activities at all levels and across all parties. Good accountability, good involvement. Everybody knows what they signed up for. Timelines are respected and things get done when they should. And records are maintained per legal requirements of the RFA, and data are collected per reporting requirements. Interesting that the activities can take place sometimes, but the data don't get collected until the director calls and asks for them, and then it's a rush. So everybody knows they're on board if you have good planning. Finally, people enforce accountability or carry their activities out as needed. And I'll wrap up on this point. If there's a question, an uncertainty, please call your contact at the coordinating board. Every RFA stipulates an institutional contact, and you will also have a staff member assigned to help manage your grant. Call sooner rather than later. Get your questions answered, get your concerns addressed. And on that, I will make one final point. We have a new law in the state. You have to maintain records for 7 years. The old requirements varied per grant, 3 to 5 years. Maintain records for 7 years now. And on that, I truly will close. I thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Questions, anybody? And just so y'all, maybe it is working now. Okay. Just so y'all know, we're going to try to maybe accelerate 10 minutes total this morning out of the first 3 presentations. So I really wasn't rushing them, but I was just trying to keep them on task. But everybody probably knows Julie Eklund, so we're just going to go ahead and transition next. Julie is Assistant Commissioner of Strategic Planning and Funding. And this was a requested session, and that's one reason why we gave you the almanacs yesterday. And so.
Good morning. Today I'm wearing my data hat, and I want to do a couple of brief updates, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the almanac or higher education data in general. And I've got my presentation with me today, so it should be a little smoother. Okay, first of all, I wanted to introduce some new staff in the Division of Strategic Planning and Funding. I know many of you work very closely with the staff in my division as liaisons. You're often the person who calls to check on what was that email about that I received, and who should that go to, and what's happening in terms of various issues related to reporting. So I wanted you to see their faces. We have a new Deputy Assistant Commissioner in the division, and that's Jenna, who is in the back, Jenna Cullinane Heggie, and Jenna actually came to us from the Dana Center, so many of you might recognize her from working on the new math pathways, but we're happy to have her here with us. We also have some new program directors. I don't know if Chris was able to make it down. It looks like Chris, are you? He's not here, okay, but we do have John Dinning, who is with us, and Chelsea Moore, She's going to be working with workforce data. You know, with our new plan, we're going to have sort of additional emphasis on the workforce, so we're happy to have her helping us out there. And Jennifer Gonzalez, who I know is upstairs working intensely on formula funding, she is the new senior program director in the funding area. And many of you knew Paul Turcotte, who left us for Central Texas A&M, and so Jennifer is going to be now handling the funding issues related to the general academic institutions. We also have a new administrative assistant, B.J. Bishop, and she's in the back there, and she's the person who is the one to find if you need to find me. I can get tied up in lots of meetings, so she'll be answering phones for me when I'm not there and helping out in all kinds of ways with the board meetings. And she's been at the agency a long time, so we're very happy to have her join us. Marilyn Hartman retired in August, and she for many years was the administrative assistant in strategic planning and funding. Okay, so on to the data, but again, these folks are available, and I did want to say that Chris, John, and Chelsea are all in the strategic planning and analysis area. So Chris is going to be heading up the almanac development process. He started last February and got to jump in right in the middle of things, so he's going to be shepherding that through the whole process this year. John is working with data requests and several other projects. He's working on the data with the new 60 by 30 text plan, and as I said, Chelsea's working with workforce data. Okay, most of you know where to find our main data website, but I wanted to include the link here. It's texashighereddata.org. Save it as a favorite. It's where you go to find most of the higher education data that we produce. So everyone, in fact, if we have new people, I just want to make sure you're familiar with that. The link to the accountability system is there. I'm going to be talking about that in a few minutes because we have a lot of changes coming there. The 8th grade cohort is something that you hear a lot about in terms of whether it's legislative testimony for folks at the agency, but it's something, and it's important to understand what it is. It's something different than is done in many other ways. It's where we look at a cohort of 8th grade students enrolled at Texas public K-12 institutions, so those students in the 8th grade, and then we track them through just sticking with that original cohort, not changing it, to see who do we find over the course of 11 years in terms of moving through K-12 into 10th grade, 11th grade, who do we find graduating, who do we find in higher education. We have some students who disappear from the cohort and come back in. They might be going off to private high schools. They might have left the state and they're coming back for college in Texas. But it's a very pure cohort where we just start with that and say, what happens moving through? And other states have started to do that. That's why we moved. We used to do it in 7th grade. We moved to 8th grade so that we can make comparisons with other states' 8th grade cohorts. The CRUISE is our consumer resource for education and workforce statistics. That's undergoing an overhaul right now, and there's also something that was just launched last week called Launch My Career, which is an outside group, but they're also using our wage and workforce data. Again, information that's very helpful for students, whether they're in high school or moving into higher ed, to see by institution what the wages are for students when they graduate and go into the workforce. So, and that has very detailed information by program area, 4-digit SIP, and in some cases 6-digit SIP. So it's important to know that's there. We know it's a little clunky right now, but there's a big redesign that's going on that the Workforce Commission is working with, and the Launch My Career site also has that same information, but it's got additional information as well. So worth taking a look at those. Okay, so here's the main data website, and I just want to make sure everyone knew it's there. On the upper right-hand corner, it's a link to the almanac, so if you go there, you can just click on that and get to the almanac page. CRUISE is front and center, so it's very easy to get to that data, and then we have a range of information. One thing people don't always notice is the latest news area. We try to put in there for our standard reports when they're coming out, we try to put it in latest news, so if you're wondering, hey, did this new report come out, you can look there, and you can even click on the top bar for latest news and see over time, hey, that report I was looking for, I don't see it here. When was the last time it came out? Oh, okay, so that's probably going to be coming out soon because it came out in December last year. It's probably going to come out in December this year. So that's helpful information to have, to know that we do try to keep that updated. We try to catch everything. Every once in a while we'll miss something, but that's available. And now I want to talk about our accountability redesign. And this is completely different. This actually looks quite a bit different already. This is something we gave to the board. But the system interface is being redesigned. It was, the governor's order was in 2004 to develop the accountability systems. The community colleges, two-year colleges came in 2005. It's getting a little bit outdated looking for those of you who work in the system, and it's the interactive really needed some updating. So we've had a lot of work going on here with our IT folks in the last year and a half now, working on a redesign for the interface for the accountability system. And the timing, of course, was deliberate because with the new state plan, the 60 by 30 tech state plan, we knew we were also going to be looking at our accountability measures and updating those, making sure they're appropriate given the new plan and the new focus of the agency. So these two things have been happening parallel. We've had IT folks here working hard with our staff in terms of redesigning the interface, and then we've been having meetings around well, we had meetings here in April with our accountability peer group folks. And how many of you, I know there's a lot of folks who work on those committees, how many of you actually serve as the accountability peer group representatives? So we've got a few. Yes, those folks came and joined us in April. We walked through the proposed measures, many of which are existing measures that we have, but we also looked at, of course, measures tied to the new plan. We sent them out for feedback. I think it was in late summer. We had webinars. So, of course, the first group worked. We took their suggestions, put together some proposed changes. Then we sent them out to institutions as liaisons. You probably received those. I hope you did. We asked for feedback there. We got feedback from institutions, and then based on that feedback, we had a webinar which was held at the end of September. And so now we do have a list of updated measures. There's fewer. In fact, I don't know if Jenna remembers, for community colleges, we're down by maybe, do you remember? About 20%. So we've got about 10 measures fewer than we had in the past. We really wanted to focus on what was most important. But with the new system redesign, we're going to have a richer interactive system. So those things that are not going to be measures in the main accountability system, many of them the data is going to be available in the interactive system. So we also are combining what was in PREP into our new database and interactive system for accountability, and I know PREP's getting pretty antiquated as well, and so all of that data is going to be built into the new system, and you're going to be able to go in and actually, in some cases, select different, well, the term they use is dimensions, but different variables you might want to look at for particular data. So we're loading these new measures and new tables into accountability, and whether it's for measures or whether it's for other interactive data, it all should be accessible, easy to use. What we're going to be doing is having what we're calling a soft launch, and that's going to be in January. So we're following our regular cycle for the accountability draft system will go up at the end of, or early in December. We're hoping, and we should be set for that. Institutions will still be able to add comments into the system. So if there's any data there that the institution wants to say, hey, here's an explanation for why this might be different from other years or different from other institutions or something special that we're doing where we're looking really good in terms of this measure. So we're going to have that opportunity as we've had in the past for the institutional comments to be included right there with the system. We think that's important and something that's worked well over the years. The institutions also, for just a few metrics for the community colleges, can add some data. So we've always had a few things that the institutions add. Most of it comes through our regular CBM reporting. So we'll have that opportunity with the draft system. And then we're going to do what we call a soft launch in January once we get our final certified data and run all the data for the measures. We're calling it a soft launch because with some changes in measures, some new measures, we want to make sure everything is making sense when we run it all with the new data, with actual data. When we load it into the system, we understand there may be a tweak or two that will happen there. Also in terms of how the system works, there may be a tweak or two in terms of how we've designed the interface. So we'll be happy to get feedback as people get in and use that new system in January and beyond in terms of how it's working, what might be different, or if we have a measure or two that really doesn't seem to be functioning the way we believe it should in terms of what's available. One nice thing about the new system is it's going to be responsive, so you'll be able to go on your mobile device and pull up this system, and it will adjust so that it makes sense for the smaller screen. So I know many of you travel, and it'll be handy for you to be able to jump in and access the accountability data through this responsive system, and have it fit and make sense. So we're excited about that. And are there any questions before? And the other thing is, in terms of the 60 by 30 text measures that are included, the information we sent out did have definitions, pretty clear ones for methodology for what's being included in those new measures, and the measures that follow along that align with the accountability, the new 60 by 30 text goals and targets. You can also find that information there. And I know you had a question when I wasn't here yesterday from Dawn about the completion measure. We include all, from our graduation report, which is our CBM 009 report, we are including all degrees and level 1 and level 2 certificates that students earn. So we're counting them all. It's similar to what we had for closing the gaps in terms of success, but we've added master's degrees, which of course doesn't apply to the 2-year colleges, but where the methodology for including degrees is the same. So that was a question we had yesterday. It's a little bit different than success points, where we only account 1 degree per year at the highest level. Okay, so any questions about the accountability redesign, the new system? Yes? Don. Oh, we need a microphone? Is someone? Yeah. Here you go. We're going to bring you another one.
That's working.
Sorry.
No problem.
Much like what Wyatt was presenting yesterday, that the first report that y'all had to do to the legislature was more like really a baseline.
Yes.
Would you draw an analogy to this accountability system, the redesigned metrics? They're going to be treated as well as kind of like baseline data for the future?
Well, the way it's working, and of course, in terms of those measures that directly align with the new plan, the baselines that he was showing you that we set for 2015, because as this plan was being developed, we were looking at some 2013 data, some 2014. It depended on when the committee was meeting and what was the most recent we had as they were looking at data and thinking about what needed to be there. And then in terms of the report that was published when the plan was adopted, that was a full year ago now, but we knew we didn't want a plan that started with 2013 data, but that we needed to publish the plan with where we were at that point in time. So those baselines are what we're going to use moving forward. But in accountability, we are going to, because it's very helpful for comparison purposes to see other years, for most of the measures, we're going to load 3 years worth of data. Is that correct, Jenna? So we're going to have 13, 14, and 15, or in some cases 14, 15, and 16 if it's fall data, where we'll have the fall 16 enrollments, those types of things. So institutions will be able to look and see, here's what we had before under this methodology for this either new measure or redesigned measure. And in many cases, they're measures that were there before, like graduation rates. So you'll be able to look at a few years back and then moving forward. Now we are going to, we're going to freeze the current accountability system and basically snapshot it. So if you're thinking, I want to go back to 2000, I want to pull data that I know is there, you're going to be able to go into that frozen system, pull what's there and use it. We're not going to, of course, be updating it, but I would mention if you're putting in comments, if your institution has comments that are outdated in there that no one's bothered for a while to update them, now would be the time, right now, to go in and say, all right, this is going to be frozen through 2015. Do I want an institutional comment there that's going to be maybe more reflective of the final year of data or what happened over time? So feel free to do that, but that needs to happen right away in the old system, because again, and we'll send something out when we send the letter for the new launch, but that would be the time to make sure what's there makes sense for your institution. Okay, and actually, before I get to the almanac, because I know we've just got about 10 minutes, let me quickly I just had a couple of very quick updates. I wanted to tell you that for our Pathways project, and I made a mistake here, but are people familiar with our Pathways projects where we have K-12 teachers and counselors, and sometimes counselors who meet with folks from higher ed in the same roles? I know Catherine's nodding her head because San Jac has an excellent Pathways project they've had for years. Well, we've had these projects in 5 areas. We've now expanded to 4 more. We're looking to add 1 additional, but because so many things now are being called Pathways, we decided it was really confusing a lot of people out there. These are specific projects we've had since 2008. They're focused on data, on alignment, on bringing teachers and faculty together under certain disciplines, or in some cases counselors, and they meet regularly and they use data, but they also try to talk about a lot of the issues going on in terms of that are around alignment. So we've renamed them, and they're called the Texas Regional Alignment Networks, and so it shouldn't be TRAN, it should be either shouldn't be TTRAN, it should be TRAN, or we're calling them regional networks, or I just saw TexRAN, which I kind of like too. It's kind of developing what the shorthand version is going to be, but our board just heard about this at the October CAP meeting, and we've gone forward with that name change, just because it's a very specific project, and we don't want to cause the confusion out there when people say Pathways. So we wanted you to know we had done that, and we're excited that we've got these new projects that are up and running. 3 of them are in the Metroplex area. We also wanted to mention that we are going to be doing some data tracking for foster youth, and we've got a data agreement signed, so there will be some information coming out there. And then also, I think many of you are familiar with the legislation that mandated that we collect information about students with IDD. So if you're not, you might want to get more information about that, but we have added elements to our reporting for spring, and so that's going to be coming soon. Okay. And so finally, let's go back to the Almanac, because this is what you were interested in. I want to make a couple of important points here. We're in our 6th year, or actually moving into our 7th year. Most of the data in the Almanac comes directly from the higher education from the CBM data that we receive. And one thing it's important to note is when we receive that data and it's certified, that is the data we use. We don't decide, oh, this doesn't look right, we're going to change it. When the data comes in, that is the data that we take and the data that we use. So if you call and have a question, we can go right back and say, that's what was reported to us. And that's really important. Now, occasionally, if we had something happen with a program, we'll look back and look at that. But the most important thing for people to remember is this is data that comes to us. If it goes through analysis, if we're running, aggregations, that sort of thing, it might not look like exactly how it came to us, because this is coming to us at the student level, and we're having to aggregate it and run the measures. But it is the data that you submitted, and we can always tie back to that. And that's why recertifications are important. We never go in and change something. We come back to you and say, this needs to be updated. We need to work to decertify and recertify and have you put your stamp of approval on it and say, this is the data that is accurate that we're giving to you. So I think that's important to know. Whoops, oh, okay. And then the other thing that we do, and it's a critical part of this for the Almanac, is we send the data out to all the institutions before we publish it. We send it to your IR people. You guys will see the notification. It's critical that they take a look, because if we did, I remember one year we had switched to columns for ACT and SAT. Somehow they had come in differently, so we went ahead and corrected that. But it's really important just to take a look and make sure that it makes sense, and we give you a window of opportunity, and this is something that Chris Hamilton, who I mentioned before, will be working with you on. But make sure your institutions look at it carefully and it makes sense, because it doesn't help us when a president comes up to us later and says, my IR people said this is wrong, that this isn't correct, that you don't have it right. This is the chance to look, and we always go back and look, and we'll say, well, that's what was reported to us, but it's a really important part of the process for your institutions to take a look at the data and make sure it makes sense. In terms of what we show, I know there's always a variety of questions about what's there, and we may see some changes moving forward, not coming up, but over time with our new measures. But we have information about student characteristics. We have dual credit information, developmental education information, transfer faculty. I know often there's questions about, well, where do those numbers come? How is that defined? How is it calculated? It's really important to know that there is a big definitions page at the front Many people miss this or don't realize it's there. That's the first place to start, is to say, okay, let's look at what years are being shown, because sometimes for certain things like Pell, we might be a year behind because that's the most recent that we have, the way our collection works. So it's important to understand that that's there, but also to please call if you have any questions about what is being calculated, how it's being calculated. I know in terms of new measures, we've had some questions about things like hours to degree, where we've had institutions who aren't clear on, well, are you including students who already have a bachelor's degree who are coming back in terms of their hours? Is that being included when they're earning a certificate, a level 1 certificate? No, they're not. Or for wages, we're very clear about what's being included. I'm sorry, for student debt, we're being very clear about what's being included. So if you have a student who's coming back who already has a bachelor's and just maybe is doing something with coding or whatever, we're not going to be including their debt all the way through their bachelor's degree or master's degree when we're showing debt information for your institution. So it's good to get into those details, because also in terms of when dual credit is included and when it's not, it's really, I think, important to understand those things, because they make a difference in terms of the data. And Jen, they rushed me down here quickly. We had a couple of things also that I think came up at the Success Institute. Did you want to just, and then I think my time is up because we're trying to save time for the commissioner. Oh, it has. Oh, good. So I don't have to rush. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So there was a question about early college high schools and whether students would be eligible for success points. And so that question came up at the Pathways Institute last week, and just wanted to clarify that students who are dual credit or early college high school in particular are eligible for all of the success points. So the only one that they would not is the developmental ed, because students who are coming in shouldn't be taking dev ed courses. But even if students are coming to your institution and accumulate those 15 hours and then subsequently enroll in a university, they would even be eligible for the transfer points. So that was one issue that came up. So I wanted to clarify that one. And there was one other about concurrently enrolled students. So some institutions have a program where they maybe start at, I'll use the example of Blinn and Texas A&M University concurrently. They're first time in college in both places. And there was a question about whether they would qualify for a transfer point, and they would not under the success points. They're considered kind of a university student. They're having that university experience right from the beginning, so they aren't kind of formally transferring. So they wouldn't fall under that definition, but they would certainly be eligible for all of the other first college level course, 15 credits, 30 credits, et cetera.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know that's something that the task force that was looking at success points had some conversations around. The other thing I will mention is that we have just received and plan to continue, for at least the higher ed level, National Student Clearinghouse data, so that I know in the past we allowed institutions to report their clearinghouse data to us so we could include them in the success point for transfer. If someone transferred out of state and you sent your files so you could prove, yeah, the student was with us, we should get success points for that. Now we're actually getting that data from the National Student Clearinghouse, so you don't need to submit them anymore. I think the word is out about that, but something I forgot about and just realized a few days ago, because I think the LBB sent a reminder, is for Rider 23, we also provided information to institutions last year regarding success points, and we loaded up files of students for you to have that. But we were not able to do that until January because of how the data came in. My understanding, though, is that they're going to just be using the 2015 data. That's the most recent I heard. So that for December 1st. Right. So you don't need any updated data for us for what the LBB is asking for December 1st, but for the spring, when we have the updated information and can include that for the success points, we will share those files with institutions so that you can meet your requirements under Rider 23, because I know you don't have the ability to know what students earn those points without getting the data files from us. So I'm glad to know now we have some time for questions. I know there's a lot of questions that can come up around data. Maybe I've covered everything. Gary, was there something else that you had mentioned that folks had brought up for why they wanted to talk about the almanac? Or?
Oh, I forgot it by now.
Okay, and we do try to have every year some new information.
Questions?
This is really not a question more than a statement to the folks that are in the room here. In terms of the folks from your institution that participate as peer group representatives for the accountability process, I would encourage you to encourage folks at your institution, especially in the instructional side, to stay in tune with their researchers with respect to not just these meetings, but with respect to the data collections process and how instruction needs to stay engaged and informed about how this data is being used and how you as an institution can use the data and information for improvement. So it kind of feels to me, because I've participated in this for a number of years as the representative from my district, that the researchers by and large kind of feel like they're institutionally isolated and not necessarily a team member when it comes to these kinds of data-related issues.
That's a very good point, and the system really is designed for institutional improvement, for institutions to be able to see where have we stood over time, but also, very importantly, for comparison to other institutions, and to try to learn from other institutions if they're doing well in terms of certain areas. It's also, of course, important for us to be able to highlight what's important to the state and to really send the message about here's where we are. Many of you may have heard we got a grant from the Gates Foundation, and we're going to have a 60 by 30 text website as well. It's not going to have the in-depth data. It's going to be higher level. It will have data related to the plan, so you'll see the same information and accountability, but again, more focused on a more general audience around 60 by 30 text, and we're excited about that. And we're also going to have a trainer. We got funds through that grant to hire a trainer in my division, and so we will have someone who's going to be able to go out and do some training, not only on that new 60 by 30 text website, but also on the new accountability website, so that we're able to share with people, this is what's here, this is how it works, and I think that's going to be really valuable, because we want people, and not just those IR people, we want people at leadership positions at colleges to be using this data, understanding what's there, and I think there are many uses for it, absolutely. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think I've shared this with Julie, but it's really for Julie and the IR folks at the institutions, and kind of a comment of what Don said. I participate in a council of AACC at the national level, and more than once I've heard people from other states say, I wish we had half the data Texas has, or any number of variants of comments like that. So we really are a data-rich state. There's lots of information out there, lots of resources, and so kudos to Julie and her team, and of course all the institutions, because they do a lot of processing, not trying to minimize that, but everything comes from the colleges, so it's a partnership.
Yes, we could not do this without all of you, and we appreciate the work that your staffs do. It's accurate data is really important. This data is not only being used, of course, for administrative purposes, for formula funding, which is very critical, but also we have education research centers that are very popular out there among researchers. We want to make so this data is being used for policy purposes, as these researchers from many of them around the country, but certainly around the state, are coming in and using the data to answer important questions related to policy and practice. So we very much appreciate the work that your folks do. And I know you'll see a lot of emails, as if you're a new liaison, coming from our division related to the data, and making sure that we all get it right. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, our next presentation is about GradTex, and it says Terry Daniels. This is not Terry Daniels. This is Ray Ramos. How long have you been here? A month? Okay, so we're just going to throw him in here and not even give any introduction or anything. But actually, he works in college readiness and student success. But with that, just go ahead and jump in and go from there.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Good morning. I am neither Kristen Kramer nor Terry Daniels. So instead of these intelligent, insightful women, you're stuck with me. I apologize. So what I want to do today is sort of just step away from the weeds a little bit and talk about one particular initiative that we have within the college, the Division of College Readiness and Success. We have a brand new subunit within our division that is focusing entirely on college completion. So we work on a number of initiatives on administering grants, providing just a wide variety of coordination and support for initiatives that have that end goal in mind of earning a degree, earning a certification, and that sort of thing. So we want to talk about one today in particular, and that's GradTex. And so what I want to do this morning is sort of fourfold. We want to give you a broad overview of GradTex, help you understand what the program is all about. We want to sort of present the underlying reasons why a program like GradTex is so critical to higher education in this day and age. Also would like to talk about the current efforts in support of GradTex, and then perhaps, and most importantly, is to sort of get some feedback and getting an understanding of how we can improve the program and what some institutions are already doing in support of that program. So what is GradTex? GradTex, at its fundamental core, is a program that's designed to reconnect students that have stopped out, that have attempted a significant number of hours or completed a significant number of hours at an institution, have stepped away, reconnecting them with an institution of higher education in the hope of getting them to complete their coursework and earn a degree or a certificate. It was launched in 2011 with 8 different institutions participating. Lamar University, Midwestern State University, Texas A&M University Commerce, Texas Tech University, the University of Houston Downtown, the University of Houston Clear Lake, the University of North Texas System, and the University of Texas at Brownsville were those institutions that initially launched with us in 2011. It targeted originally 40,000 students with 90 plus hours earned. They were enrolled at public universities at the time. And it launched really as a student portal that had an online tool where a student could actually go in, could input the hours that they had earned, and take a look at how those hours would then look at one of the participating institutions if they were to enroll. Unfortunately, we've lost that tool for a bit, and we're working to revamp that and hopefully get it back and functional on our system in the near future. I guess the most important piece of that launch originally was the fact that there were dedicated individuals at those institutions where we could then connect the prospective applicants, I guess, or re-enrollees, back to those institutions and get them back in the fold. Now, why is it that we think that a program like GradTex is so important? Now, I'm going to move forward to this slide right here. Obviously, with 60 by 30 TX, we have this overarching goal, right, of having 550,000 students earn a certificate, an associate, bachelor's, or master's degree from an institution of higher education in that year. If you look at the bottom of this slide, in 2015, we had, within the state of Texas, students earned 310,424 credentials. But if you look also, we had 49,000 community and technical school students and over 12,000 university students that had earned a substantial amount of hours but had not earned their degree up until 2015. So if you combine those two numbers, we would have earned 371,830 total degrees in 2015. And that would put us right at that 2020 target, or that goal, that benchmark for 60 by 30. So it's really important to take a look at this population of students and see how we can reconnect with them. That's obviously not news to you, but it's something that's really important to both you and to us. And so we want to see how we can help you along toward that goal. This also should not be news to you guys. In looking at these numbers, these are the number of stopouts nationally, and the percentage of stopouts that had either 0 stopouts, 1 stopout, 2 stopouts, or 3 or more interruptions in their collegiate career. And what's most telling is that, for example, in the blue portion of the slide, where we're looking at two-year institutions, those folks with that took 2 years to complete their degree, 86% had 0 stopouts. That's not a surprise. You don't leave, you stay in school, you follow your degree curriculum, you'll earn your credential in time, right? But those students that took 6+ years to a degree, you can tell, had usually 2, 3, or more stopouts. Not a surprise. Why is this important in Texas? Well, in Texas, using clearinghouse data, students earn 90 semester hours when they earn their 2-year credential. Again, not a surprise. On average, it takes students 4.4 years to earn their associate's degree. So we look more like the 6+ years to degree here than we would the 2-year. So that's important to keep in mind here in the state of Texas. This plan originally targeted those folks that either had 90+ semester credit hours at public universities or 45+ semester credit hours at 2-year institutions here in Texas. They never graduated and were not currently enrolled at the time. And from 2012 to 2014, we had a total of 135,000 stopouts. So that's who we originally targeted with our initiative, with the website and other streams of the initiative that we will talk about here in a second. So why do students stop out? More often than not, life gets in the way, right? These are things that we battle day in and day out. I myself came from an institution. I was in an institution for 16 years, and boy, is it a different perspective stepping into the coordinating board and seeing things from this side. But the financial issues, scheduling issues, childcare, all those things that get in the way. Students might not have been performing well academically. They didn't feel like they were getting enough institutional support. They found that they really didn't need the degree. They had transportation issues or joined the military. There's a wide variety of different reasons that students demonstrated to us through a survey that we conducted for GradTex users for stopping out. Many of the respondents mentioned the intrinsic value of that degree, the personal satisfaction that they were getting right for that degree, not necessarily the marketability of the degree, but why it was important to them, to themselves. Knowing why these individuals stop out of college is really important in informing the interventions that we put together to reconnect these individuals to getting back into higher education. So how can we improve GradTex? Here in College Readiness and Success, we are working to revamp the website. We want it to be more dynamic, more user-friendly. You know, the important thing about GradTex is we really wanted to be a versatile student portal where these stopped-out students could visit one site, right, instead of having to search multiple institutional sites, and be able to link them directly to those institutions, to a person that could help them through this process of getting back on campus, whether it was at the original institution or at a brand new institution of their choosing. We also stepped into a partnership with the University of Virginia and entered into a texting campaign Those 135,000 students that we originally targeted, we passed along information, got the institutions together with the University of Virginia, and started sending text messages to these folks just to remind them what it would take to get back into higher ed. We've had some success with that. Unfortunately, our data is lagging a little because we didn't have the ability to collect student-level data or course-level data until recently. So we were a little behind the curve. So some of the students had already completed their degree or had already re-enrolled at other institutions. So we're working hard to clean up the data, to work with institutions. I believe we only have 3 community college districts currently that are a part of the texting campaign. If I remember correctly, it's Dallas, El Paso, and Houston, if I remember correctly. So all in all, we're trying to find new and innovative ways to reach out to these students, get them the information they need, and hopefully get them reconnected to institution. So what will help in getting these students to complete a degree or credential? I think this first point, this identifiable cohort, is probably the most important. I don't know about your institutions, but I know at my old institution, we didn't do a good enough job of tracking students when they departed from the university, the reasons why they left, and I think that that's really important now in getting them reconnected. So really understanding who this population consists of at your particular institution. That will obviously better inform institutional policies and intervention. Things like that concierge advising, where there's one person on campus. Obviously, when you're trying to step back into higher ed, trying to find out, which hours still count, if your degree plan has changed, how you're going to pay for schooling. All of those things are so important, but it's a daunting task. And so we need individuals that can sort of step up to the plate and help these students specifically through this experience. Obviously, greater flexibility in scheduling and delivery of curriculum. It has proved effective at some institutions, including increased online degrees and courses. And increased financial literacy to help these students understand how they're going to pay for this schooling. It's important for these students, obviously, to see that light at the end of the tunnel, to understand that it can be done, that it can be accomplished. And so that's really the goal of GradTex. So we want to talk about a little, or get an understanding from you guys as to how we can help you re-engage these students and perhaps get an understanding of what you guys are already doing on your campuses, how you've reached out to these students, but ultimately, how can we help you guys?
This is the chance to talk. Nobody?
Thank you. Yeah, stop-outs, when we were looking at retention, turned out stop-outs were actually the biggest problem. We've done a number of things, and stop-outs have dropped dramatically. One of the things that we did that made a big difference, we went to 8-week terms. And so instead of having 16-week terms, we now have many more on-ramps for students because 80% of our students are part-time.
Yeah.
And they work, they have to make ends meet, that kind of thing. The other thing that's very important is the individual advising, so that when the students come there, we now have work out a 2-year plan or whatever plan it takes from the moment they come back to college or stay in college to when they're going to get their degree. And we map out every course they'll take and every term they'll take it. And so then the advisors will work with the student to bring them back and then we automatically enroll them. So once you're enrolled at Odessa College, you're not allowed to unenroll. we just keep you enrolled, and if you don't show up, we contact you, we go out there and bring them back, et cetera.
Right.
And there's some other areas that we've done as well, but overall, stop-outs have now dropped dramatically. Our semester-to-semester retention rate has skyrocketed, and graduation rates have doubled over the last 4 years.
Wow, that's great. That's great to hear.
Don, I really have a question for you. Do you purge, once students have enrolled but they haven't paid? We've been arguing with our folks in-house about quit purging these students, so do y'all purge?
I hate that word purge, okay? So clearly, if they don't pay, we're not going to be able to let them go on. And we have periods of time so that if they don't pay, then they get a call, and then we now have, what I say, a much more robust financial planning and engagement with the students than we've ever had before. We have revamped our entire financial aid program to be able to provide students with the kind of financial backgrounds we have. So yes, there are students that don't make it, but we have reduced that by 80% over what it was 5 years ago. So now there's only maybe less than 20% of the students that apply that don't make it there, and we have record enrollments and record retentions. But that financial aid, you're absolutely right, that's critical to help them out.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Your contact information is not on any.
Yes, ma'am. It is the same thing as Terry Daniels. It is Ray, R-E-Y, .Ramos, R-A-M-O-S, at, all those letters after the at.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Hey, we won an award recently for having the easiest email address to remember.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the break now. I kind of said this in the transition. We were trying to accelerate a little bit of time this morning because the commissioner's office had asked for a few minutes, and now the commissioners are going to be in the agency today, is what I've been told. So we're a few minutes early. This will be your last break, and then those of you that printed it out, the last PowerPoint has 100 and some odd slides in it. I didn't even look. 111? Okay. That's really the AQW division, so we're going to sequence through that. So anyway, this is your last break opportunity. We have a lot of the staff that's in the back room now if you have any questions, but enjoy. We'll get started back up at 10 o'clock. Put that on the bottom of my shoe, and I'll Okay, this is your 1-minute warning to be headed to your chairs, please. I get to start calling names. Okay, let's go ahead and get ready to get started, please. This is our last 2-hour segment. Hour and 45 minutes, hour and 50 minutes, whatever we have. Oh, is that Catherine O'Brien over there talking, Rex?
No, Rex is talking to me.
Oh, okay. The last PowerPoint presentation, as Sissy said, is 111 slides long, and this is really our division and academic quality and workforce. And the way we structured the presentation, we did it this way last year. It's got a bunch of extra slides in it that I probably could have taken out, but I've got whoever the presenter is, the subject, and then their contact at the information on the tail end of it. So when you get this back to your institutions, it's easier to break it into segments and give it to the appropriate people, and then they know how to contact us and that kind of stuff. And so hopefully we've got everybody on a schedule. We'll get to the end of this. If you have questions, let us know, but we do have a slide at the end for questions, but we don't really have enough time to stop and do a whole lot of questions through this. But anyway, with that, let's get started. Oh, you can introduce yourself, Cam.
Hi, I'm Cam Mayert. I'm Special Projects Director with AQW, and I'm going to talk to you very briefly about transferring in credits or working with students from recently closed schools, in particular ITT and Career Point College. We just had 2 recent rather major school closures, but we think that there may be more coming down the line. So if you could just think about transferring credits from those career schools. On the slide, SACS has a position statement on transferring credits, and of course, I can't read it, I'm sorry. Of course, you would want to look at transfer credits in terms of level, content, quality, comparability, and degree program relevance. But I just want to remind you that it does not limit you from taking credits from an institution that was not regionally accredited. And so at the time that ITT and Career Point closed, they were accredited by ACICS, which is still recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. So at the time the students were in the programs, they were in a recognized and accredited program. So please keep that in mind. And ideally, I know the students would have started with a community college, but they didn't. And so in reality, now they may be coming to you and wanting to transfer into your programs. So you may consider alternative pathways. And if you have questions on any of these pathways, you can always talk to Gary, or I know Catherine O'Brien is an expert on these.
And let me jump in here for a second. And really and truly, the whole purpose of this slide, and even the Cam's first slide there, is hopefully try to, and I know lots of institutions are, we've worked with many institutions. We were able to obtain the email addresses of the students. We send information to the students on behalf of several different institutions. But, just consider alternative pathways as an example. Look at the courses, as Cam said, if possible. But you can do prior learning assessment, credit by exam. You can, if you are not comfortable with where the students are, maybe consider putting them in a block scheduled program and restart them, resequence them through the content, but accelerate it, because if they already had 50%, 75%, whatever number, they should have a level of mastery. So hopefully, you might be able to knock a course out in a month or whatever the time interval is. But just hopefully, and we know you're doing this, but let's just make sure we try to give as much consideration to these students as we possibly can is our point.
Okay, the next two slides you can look at in your handout. It's just where the records are. For ITT students, a lot of them, for the recent ones, are with Parchment, so that's good. Bankruptcy proceedings in both cases are intervening, so we don't have access to all of the records. So if you can possibly be patient with these students, they may not have official transcripts right away. But the most recent ones, that's the best bet that they will actually be able to provide you with official transcripts. So that's for ITT students, and then Career Point College students. You can look at those. And then the last thing I wanted to say was just recently, the Department of Education has provided guidelines on comparable programs. So for your admissions departments, that might be helpful. And if you'd like the link for that, you can email me and I will provide you the link. Because prior to this, they weren't really telling us what a comparable program was, so that a student could make the decision whether they wanted to transfer in and continue their education, or they wanted to get a loan discharge. And with that loan discharge, they could not use those credits for a comparable program. So if you have any questions or you want that link, just email me. Thank you.
One other note, Kim kind of had it on her slide that the pre-2001 records will be delayed. The bankruptcy trustee for ITT, our understanding, our latest information, is collecting all the records and going to have those digitized and then make them available at the state level at some time in the future. We learned by working with the Office of the Attorney General that ITT had over 6,000 boxes of records archived in a storage retrieval place. And so retrieving that, digitizing that, and all that kind of stuff is going to take some time. So again, one of those things, and we understand SACS and all that kind of stuff, but if a student has a paper copy from 1995, you're not going to be able to get a certified copy unless something's happening that I'm not aware of anytime soon. So just work with the students as best you can. And the same thing with Career Point. And actually, at 1:30 today, I think it is, we have a conference call with the AG's office on one of the bankruptcies. Our interest is in protecting and retrieving the student records. And so it's an ongoing process. We'll keep you updated as time goes on. Rebecca Leslie.
Rebecca Leslie, and I coordinate the activities of the ACGM Advisory Committee, the ACGM Learning Outcomes Project, and I'm responsible for the online ACGM. Originally, the ACGM was just a list of SIP numbers and funding codes that community colleges use to report for funding their courses. It has evolved over the last 20 years to include common numbers, and more recently we're splitting group courses apart and developing descriptions and learning outcomes for individual courses, and it's becoming more of use in transfer, in facilitating transfer. But it is the pre-approved inventory for community colleges. Unlike universities that have unique inventories, the community college have a single inventory. Why is the ACGM important? Well, it's important for funding, for one thing. If it's not in there, then there's got to be some other way that you get funding, and there is a unique need. And then, of course, there's WECM for those kind of career and technical courses. But in terms of transfer, it has become even more important because they are guaranteed to be transferable. Universities are required by statute to identify their equivalents in their catalog and in their websites. And the ACGM has become the building blocks for core curriculum and field of study and other initiatives that the coordinating board has done statewide. does not operate in a vacuum. We do change. The ACGM does change, and it has evolved. There is, as I mentioned, the committee that meets 2 to 3 times a year, and we have input from discipline faculty work groups, mainly the Learning Outcomes Project, and also from individual institutions and professional academic organizations. It also meets and reviews things that are part of a statewide initiative like TSI or Fields of Study or Tuning. Another important role that the ACGM Advisory Committee is responsible for is identifying obsolete and underutilized courses. Now, in 2014, we undertook the first comprehensive review, which looked at all courses. Prior to that time, they might do 1 or 2 disciplines a year. But in 2014, we looked at every course in the ACGM. And that year, the committee voted to recommend about 300 courses for deletion. So those have gone off, most of those have gone off the books. And those were really kind of low-hanging fruit, as we say, because it was where there was duplicate content, or there were very few community colleges offering. A lot of them had no community colleges offering. So it was kind of like a house cleaning. When we do this every spring now, the advisory committee, this will be, we'll do that spring of 2017, we'll do it again. This past year, 2016, they only recommended 3 courses to be scheduled for deletion. So compared to 300 and down to 3, the bulk of the work has been done in streamlining and making it more useful as a document for transfer. When they're doing these reviews, they look at what's in rules. In rules, it says if 3 or fewer community colleges are offering a course, it has to be reviewed for deletion. You have to consider it. You have to look at what's going on here. Then also in rules, if a course is not transferable and applicable to degrees at universities, then there's a minimum of 5 universities that you need to look at for that standard. And also remember that once a course is deleted, there's a 2-year teach-out period where institutions can appeal that, but they have to bring forward new information. We can't hear the same thing over and over and not have new information. That 2-year teach-out period is for maybe something that's not clear in data, that is beyond the data that we're looking at, that gives the institutions that opportunity. You got 2 years to bring something forward. Who is making these decisions? Well, it's the committee itself is made up of a pretty diverse group. We look for people in academics. We want the people who are at the dean and VP level, but also the faculty members to bring us that perspective. Also, we've had people from institutional research, transfer articulation, advising, enrollment management, but for the kind of work we're doing now, we really need those academic administrators and faculty to help us with those decisions. The ACGM Learning Outcome Project goes along with this because we're refining and building with the ACGM project. We're kind of, with the deletions, we're pulling things away, but with the learning outcome projects, we're putting things in. So we're making improvements. The first learning outcomes were added in 2010, so we moved pretty far down the list of disciplines. There are still courses in there without learning outcomes, but we hope we'll get to those soon. Just like the ACGM committee itself, we appreciate the faculty that participate in this project. And for you, that's, I hope that you bring this to your faculty, the opportunities to participate in that, because we do call for nominations and interested faculty. This year we did music, dance, and developmental education, and there were calls for nominations. Make sure your faculty is aware of that. And then if they're not a member of the work group, they can participate by participating in the comment period when these are on our website. Tell them they're out there for them to look at. And then finally, once they're approved and adopted, then the next step is implementation. They need to be aware of the changes so they can make those changes in their curriculum and their syllabus to move this forward. And here is the timeline. So we'll be making a call for nominations. We haven't chosen the disciplines yet, but that'll be coming up next spring. Then we'll have face-to-face meetings here in the coordinating board, and we'll have a 30-day comment period in the fall. We just finished up this year's. The ACGM committee is meeting next week, and they'll be looking at the music and the dance and the developmental ed. And then once adopted, we'll put them in the ACGM, and I hope to have that available to faculty at the end of January, early February, and then implementation for the fall. We hope that gives you enough time to your faculty to move forward. But remember, if there are some deletions involved with the recommendations with the learning outcomes, those courses will have a 2-year teach-out period. So you're not going to pull something out from under your faculty without having ample time to make adjustments. And our ACGM is online, both as a PDF and an interactive. And those, I don't know if you can see the links down below there, but those are the forms to use if an institution wants to bring forth a request for a new course, or if they want to modify an existing course, and if they want to appeal a deletion. Those forms are available there. Okay, that's all I had.
I know this may take some time to address through your timeline process, but I would really make an appeal for any kinds of recommended changes as far as implementation. If it's going to be a fall implementation, institutions, especially the larger ones, we have to finish our curriculum process before our faculty go home for the Christmas break. And so getting this in January, we're already moving into catalog production by that time.
And I say that, and I said that about the deletions. You're not going to have to abruptly change things. So if you're, it's more that they're meeting all the qualifications or requirements of the learning outcomes. And when you meet with these groups, mainly they're saying, we're already doing this. This is not a problem for us. And these represent the minimum rather than, if you need to have something already there and you're already doing it and you need to continue that and kind of reassess things, we're not going to come in and penalize you because of that. We understand that that's going to take time. and hope that the timeline makes it possible.
Rebecca, as the learning outcomes are rolling out, so far this year, I have had to deal with 3 universities who have said they will no longer accept our course because courses. There was a linear equation, there was a physics course, and now I think finite math. And those were at Texas A&M Galveston, Texas A&M, and then one at Baylor. The reason and their rationale is because the learning outcomes that they're looking at in the ACGM is what they're using to deny transferability of our courses. So on the WECM side, we have a beautiful comments box that we are able to add to or provide feedback, and it goes out. And I've made the suggestion that the ACGM needs a similar comments box. So instead of these universities saying to us, we're not going to take your course, they can instead let the agency know what is lacking in those courses so that they can be revised. And courses that should not be. Okay, the other thing that we do with that comments box on the WECM side is data is not always accurate at the state level, and so we have community colleges that will say, please don't archive that course. We've been using it for the last 5 years, but for whatever reason, it's not showing up on the books. That would be helpful too. I mean, you know, I had to jump through quite a few hoops to save the dance program and to finally get the agency to pull those courses together to look at the learning outcomes, and it shouldn't be that difficult. Thank you.
Thank you for the idea of the comment box. We'll take that under consideration.
Would it be possible to upload the minutes after ACGM meets to the website so we have that for reference for future issues that come up?
We usually don't upload them until they're actually approved by the committee. So there is a lag time there. If you have questions about, of course, the video is available and you can contact me.
Another thing you might be able to do to help with that would be to try to develop a process for approving the minutes electronically after the meeting, and then they could get posted more quickly than waiting for the next meeting 6 months later.
Just keep in mind that some of the things that the advisory committees do, all, but some then require coordinated board approval. Hesitate to put something up that has not yet been approved. Happen if we post it. So we may be able to parse that out and post what we can, but not post the other. As long as everybody understands then that the minutes don't necessarily translate into policy. Right. I think that would happen a lot. Just a disclaimer. I'm not going to stop people from, I mean, it happens all the time. So. What?
Yeah.
As long as everybody understands that doesn't then necessarily make policy. I've seen it happen the other way often. So we'll think about that and see what will be appropriate.
Okay. Okay, in the interest of trying to keep a schedule, we need to move on. Dwayne.
Good morning. Today's presentation on WECM is probably very similar to the one you just heard. So if you hear something you heard before, just check your bingo card and yell bingo when you hear 5 that match. First of all, WECM is the web-based inventory of pre-approved workforce education courses available for use by public two-year colleges. Here's a picture of the search page. If you do search courses and then put in your search criteria, you can look at courses. Something new with the WECM, which is kind of coming into line with the ACGM, is that the WECM will now be reviewed by the WECM Advisory Committee. This committee was created in October 14, 2016, and that's the Statute is Chapter 1, 220 through 1, 226. The role of the advisory committee is to provide advice and recommendations regarding the content, structure, currency, and presentation of the WECM, to provide recommendations regarding field engagement of the process, maintenance, and use of the WECM, and to provide assistance in identifying new disciplines of study, developments within existing disciplines, vertical and horizontal alignment of courses within disciplines, and obsolescence of disciplines of study and of courses. The WECM Advisory Committee will contain up to 24 members. We'll have a mix of faculty and administrators from public, community, state, and technical colleges that have demonstrated leadership in workforce education, and then we'll have one ex-officio representative from each of the professional organizations of TACTI, TACE, and TACRO. The WECM Advisory membership is tasked with making recommendations regarding the addition, revision, and deletion of courses in the WECM, the approval of local need course requests, and other activities necessary for the maintenance of the WECM. Part of the new process that maintenance responsibilities for the WECM will be assumed by the coordinating board, again with that advisory committee beginning fall of 2017. All WECM courses will be subject to review based on triggers. Here are a list of the triggers, one of kind of in order of, or no particular order, but programs of study recommendations, emerging and or changing technologies, accreditation or licensure changes, emerging industries, changing technologies, and skill standards. During the process, an email or letter will be sent from the coordinating board to the workforce administrators, probably through the e-update or the GovDelivery, noting a timeline for submitting WECM comments about courses needing to be changed. So we're going to be relying on the colleges to notify us if they see changes coming up in licensing, accreditation, or other disciplines that might need to be added. The type of workshop, either face-to-face or virtual, will be determined based on the type of triggers that we have. The workshops, either virtual or face-to-face, will review the credit courses, continuing education courses, local need, and special topics courses. Again, just to review, local need courses are used to respond to unique local or regional needs or to address regulatory changes. Again, it's a way to get ahead of the WECM changes. If you need a course this semester to address changes, you can submit it as a local need course, and then eventually it'll get written into the WECM. These are submitted to coordinating board for approval, and they're placed on a local course inventory at each college, and they're subject to renewal every 2 years. And we're about to send out the form now or sometime this month asking whether to renew or expire courses that have started 2 years ago at your institutions. Special topics courses are pre-approved courses available in the WECM in each SIP and rubric. Topics are submitted to the coordinating board, but the course itself is already pre-approved. They're intended for temporary use, such as current events or other recent developments, and they're reviewed to determine if there's enough commonality that a new WECM course might be needed. Very similar to the current process, the coordinating staff will publish the WECM workshop results each year, no later than September 1st. They'll be available for immediate use, but they'll be required for implementation the following academic year, the following September 1st. The summary of the annual workshops are available at our WECM 2000 workshops page, and course changes will take effect, like I said, the following academic year. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Or
let me jump here in a second, Dwayne. We have worked closely with the WECM Leadership Committee, Don Perry, Dina, Catherine, Terry, anybody else here from WECM. Cynthia, well, you were there. Are you still there or were there? I don't remember. Still there? We're meeting next week for 2 or 3 days, but this is about a 2-year conversation to get to this point, and it's really just onboarding WECM, and we're trying to move from a reactionary, time-driven kind of process to a more proactive process. Couple of brief examples, not faulting or anything else, but Cisco, the Cisco networking courses, they changed their curriculum a couple of years ago. Computer science wasn't scheduled to be reviewed until last summer or whenever it was, and so the colleges had to write local need courses or special topic courses or whatever until computer science was reviewed and those courses were updated. And so that's an example of where we lag time. An example, the FAA is working to update, revise the airframe power plant mechanics certification process, and there's a group that is following that process, and the WECM group has kind of participated in those conversations a little bit, and so hopefully once those new standards come into place, we'll revise those courses at the state level, you know, with the faculty from all the programs in the state, do the changes, whatever needs to be done, and implement them in WECM, and so we'll be caught up as opposed to, you know, if they get it done next year and the FAA courses weren't intended to be looked at for 3 more years, we're current. And so it's just, it's an onboarding of the process, and hopefully it'll be more reactive, and not reactive, proactive, so we'll be forward-looking. Anyway, any comments for, questions for Dwayne? I'm so used to Don now.
The other D. Okay, thank you.
Fuan again. I told her she only gets 3 minutes this time or something, I don't remember.
Great. Good morning again, Fuanen. Gary has asked me to provide an update for the Nursing Innovation Grant Program, or NIGP. Per the current governing statute that we have for the program, until August 2019, eligible programs for this grant will be those preparing students for the initial licensure as registered nurses, ORN. And also eligible will be programs that prepare qualified nursing faculty to teach in those initial licensure nursing programs. Since our last meeting, we have released a request for application. In May 2016, this year, we announced the simulation and building simulation and skills lab capacity grant opportunity. I'm sorry, I missed the end there on my slide. And the eligible nursing programs for this simulation grant are those at 2-year, 4-year health-related and independent institutions of higher education. The programs to be eligible must have the approval from the Texas Board of Nursing, and those programs must not be designated as conditional approval by the Board of Nursing. The conditional approval status means that the program will have to cease enrolling new students. And the goal of the RFA is to support the increase in the use of simulation, particularly high fidelity simulation. It's an attempt to help address the shortage in clinical sites and the challenges that programs faced in securing hands-on patient care opportunities for the students. For this new building simulation and skills lab capacity grant, the maximum award amount per grant is $200,000, and it's for a 24-month grant period. The main budget categories that support the shift and increased use in simulation are equipment and software purchases, facility renovation work is also allowed under the grant program, faculty development and training, and also release time for any kind of curriculum and course redesign work. Applications were due on August 15, 2016, and we received a total of 34 applications, including 24, about 70%, from 2-year institutions. I don't think you can read the numbers. We have 7 applications from 4-year institutions, and 3 from health-related institutions, and we didn't have anything from independent institutions this time. Here's the timeline. Between August and November, we conducted application review, again using the criteria published in the RFA. And as of yesterday, we have an email sent out on behalf of Dr. Rex Peoples announcing 17 grant awards for the grant period to start on January 1st, 2017. Those 17 awards include 12 two-year institutions, and again, that's about 70%, and about 50% of the submitted applications from two-year institutions receive an award. The other awards went to 1 health-related institution and 4 four-year institutions. The awards list will eventually be posted on our website, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Any questions for Fuan? Nope. Okay, thank you. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Acton, and I am the state coordinator for SARA. That's a state authorization reciprocity agreement, and Gary has graciously allotted me 1 minute to provide you with a few quick updates.
Wait a minute, she has one slide.
Yes. So we just wrapped up our first year of implementing SARA. You can see some updates on the slide. We currently have 88 Texas institutions that are participating in SARA. Of that, 23 are community colleges. And we also, it says 42 states are participating in SARA. However, we now have 44. At the SREB steering committee meeting 2 weeks ago, we voted to bring in Pennsylvania and Kentucky, so there's 44. And they do anticipate by the end of 2018 to have all 50 states, so that's good news. And so that's really all I have as far as an update. I do encourage you to reach out to me if you have any questions about participation in SARA or just any questions regarding it. So with that, are there any questions at this time?
Does anybody want to ask Jessica about SARA?
No.
I think you used 2 minutes anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Mindy. And of course, as I said, I mean, if anybody at your institution has SARA questions, you know, send them back to Jessica. That's the point of the way we put this together. Mindy.
And good morning again. I'll update you on our Fields of Study initiative next. Here you see the authorizing legislation that requires the coordinating board to develop field of study curricula. It's 2015 update that requires that existing field of study curricula periodically be reviewed to ensure alignment with student interest and academic industry needs. And of course, you all are well aware of the significance of field of study curricula to community colleges. A student transferring from a community college to another institution, usually a 4-year, and accepted into a degree program, possessing from their community college a field of study curriculum completion, must have those courses accepted and credit given toward the major in that degree. If the student has completed some of the courses in the field of study curriculum, but not all of them, all of those courses have to be accepted. They can't be required to retake. They must be applied to the major. Now, with programs of study, which Gary will talk about in a minute, Fields of Study is a major initiative in our division. And let me go back from there. I will give you a little kind of update on resource allocation for that. Staff time and facility time are a challenge. We've got one Open Meetings Act compliant meeting room right now. We are seeking to add to that through various means, undecided at the moment, but we're trying to expand our capacity to hold meetings. We've internally reallocated resources so that we have some dedicated staff time. We are also going to staff 2 new positions dedicated to this FOS-POS initiative in the coming year. And we have asked the upcoming legislature for funding to support this initiative, as it is a priority with the legislature that transferability be improved. Now, I'm going to kind of go quickly through some field of study questions I've gotten over the past year. Do they take the place of regional articulation agreements or voluntary compacts? No. No. Your regional articulation agreements with universities are not superseded by a field of study curriculum. It's a statewide curriculum that will transfer, but your regionals remain intact. Additionally, every course in a field of study curriculum is required acceptance upon transfer to a university and acceptance of a student into a program. The voluntary compacts allow universities to opt out if they don't have a particular course in the curriculum. Second question I've gotten is, will a field of study curriculum determine what courses an academic program at a community college can teach? And again, the answer is no. That's a local decision. Any course in the ACGM in a given discipline can be taught at a community college by a program. Now let me go on to show you this little chart of our progress. When I talked to you last year, we had rules in place to review most of the existing 9 field of study curricula. We had one committee formed, and we had 1 or 2 others in the formation stages. Since then, we have rules pending for the remaining 2. We've gotten 4 active committees into gear. We have 1 approved field of study. That means it's gone through the board and been approved. That's Mexican American Studies. We have another pending. Oh dear, this is not my update. What did you do wrong, Gary? No, it's not the next slide. I want you to put under pending approval a red check mark next to nursing field of study curriculum. And congratulations to Donna Carlin on the recent success of that committee. She staffed that committee. We have 1 approved and 2 pending approval. They'll both be in the review and comment stage prior to going to the board. In addition to that, we have 2 new field of study curricula. One, architecture. It has been, it is complete. It'll go through review and comment and will go before the board. We will be doing performing arts drama in this upcoming year. So we've been busy as we can be, and we are going to be busier. Now, I'll finish this by showing you that in the past, or in the most recent update to field of study completion data, which is FY15, we see a little jump in the use of field of study curricula. Don't know if that's due to increasing awareness, but we hope usage of field of study curricula by community colleges will continue to increase as awareness of them grows. And as we continue this initiative, we see this as a major pathway for community college students seeking to transfer to university. They still remained a very small and underutilized component of community college education. And with that, I bet my 5 minutes are up. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Just, do you have any sense yet of when the business might be looked at?
What's our timeline on that, Gary?
Well, we don't have a definitive timeline. We've done some analysis, and we're looking at the big graduation completion programs, business, psychology, some of those. Excuse me. You got me all choked up, Don. Mindy mentioned the performing arts. We also have rules that we're adopting in January for computer science and criminal justice, I think is the next one. Is that what you had? So it's part of this is we're trying to figure out where we can make the biggest impact, and part of this is when we get requests from the field. As an example, Mexican American Studies, we were contacted by that group many times. They came together in an afternoon, updated, and called it good. And so there's kind of a balance in there. But as Mindy said, there's a certain amount of our available resources and what we can get done and that kind of stuff. But this is a major priority of the board. Mindy said, does this replace statewide articulation agreements? And the answer is no. The statute doesn't make you not do that or anything like that. But once we get these done, the question is almost why would you do that? Because as Mindy said, statute requires the universities to transfer these. There's two key paragraphs in the statute. Paragraph B says that if they complete the entire field of study, they've got to take it. And then paragraph C says if they complete the courses. And it's very similar to the language, if you will, in the core curriculum, to where if you complete a block in the core, your core complete for that block. And so these are the transfer pathways, and it's really not transfer, but these are the courses that apply. These fill squares in the degree plan, and they're not required to be adopted by the community colleges, but why would you go a different pathway once there's enough of these done, since the universities have to transfer them? Mike?
I'm just wondering what certificates means in the context of that slide.
That means that a student has completed all the courses in a field of study curriculum.
A field of study counts as a completion in the accountability system. Don't ask me where exactly in there, but you can denote a field of study as a completer. Danny.
In your additional funding for fields of study, do you have some money set aside for promoting and advertising the applicability requirements and the statutes at the university level?
Well, we asked for additional money last session, and we didn't get it, and so money this session, if we get it, that might be a conversation. We really haven't had that. But I will tell you that we've had conversation about trying to structure these on our website from a student point of view. I see them as blueprints or roadmaps, and we need to make them very user-friendly, readable for 8th graders, high school counselors, parents, and that kind of stuff. And so that's a conversation that Mindy, Elizabeth, and others have had. We haven't really made much progress on that, but we're going to work on that. And so maybe after that could be the marketing piece, if you will. Do you have a comment, Mindy?
Are there other questions?
Whichever.
No, go ahead. There's one too many grabs. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There are 4 of the colleges here in Texas that are participating in AACC Pathways, and plus quite a few of us were in the room last week for TAC Pathways. One of the things I have a concern about is as the colleges kind of start on their own down the road looking at pathways, and then over here eventually the state might get around to adding to this, I'm afraid we're going to get a kind of a crash going on which courses are in the field of study, which ones have been identified for pathways. It would be very helpful if the state could put together a long-range plan of fields of study so that we would know maybe which ones are coming, eventually kind of in the future down the pipe. How deep are we going to get into this? Are we going to have one for history and one for government, or will it be at the meta-major level for, social behavioral sciences? Thank you.
Yeah, that's on my to-do list. But I can tell you that one of the things we've looked at is the top 20 to 25 majors. And what we did was we looked at a list of community college students who transferred with at least 50 hours and the major they declared at the community college. Then we took those same students and looked at the major they declared at the four-year institution they transferred to. And then we took that same list of students and looked at the major they actually graduated in from the four-year institution. And it turns out that the list of the top 20 to 25 majors is virtually identical among all three. What you will see is that things, sometimes the place changes. You know, what was fourth on the first one is now third on the third list or something like that. But the top 20 to 25 are all virtually the same. Government and history both are among those top 25, but they also include nursing. What's the most popular? Nope. Psychology is certainly on the list. It's actually in the top 10. Nope. Business is like number 4 or 3. The most popular is actually multidisciplinary studies. But why? Do what? Do what? No, it's not, actually. That's what you think, right? That's what I thought, too. But we actually dug into the data. It turns out that of those multidisciplinary studies, about 80% of those are actually interdisciplinary studies majors. Those are your people who are going to college to be elementary and junior high teachers. Now, that's what those are. And then the rest of it is that kind of catch-all, general studies, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary stuff. But that turns out to be a small percentage. And what that tells you then, if SBAC can ever get settled down on what certifications it wants to have, then we need to look at the AATs. But we've got that list, and we can push that out. And so we're working on that, and that would really help with the pathways work. It's a good point, yeah. And the other thing is just one other comment about this, about statewide articulation and all that. This stuff was conceived in the first place by the legislature and whoever 10, 12 years ago now, primarily as a transfer tool. And I can tell you that the legislature is very interested in transfer. We get a lot of questions about it, and there's a lot of comments made by legislators about it. One at a session back last spring was, I don't want to get another phone call about some student who can't transfer to some institution. Now, that was as far as it went, but I think that tells you a little bit about some of the frustration that they feel over this. And so I think anything we can do to help that and try to move that along, and we think that both the fields of study and, as you'll hear in a minute, the programs of study are ways to affect that. But the community colleges have to use them. And one of the things that I fear, and in a way, I don't really fear this because I'm not sure it would be such a bad thing, but I think if once these things, we get some of these done, and there's no evidence that community colleges are using them, then the legislature will simply require you to. But the reality is it really is in the long-term best interest of students. And as long as we keep that in mind, and then we push them to that. But I also think you raise a good point about the communications piece. And I think that that's something that we probably routinely, and we can set this up in such a way that the four-year institutions and or community colleges could routinely get something from us every quarter or whatever would be appropriate to remind them of what their responsibilities are, so to speak. So.
Okay. You can keep that one. Carrying on, Elizabeth, come up here. Elizabeth Steele is going to co-present this with me. She's a program director. She's doing a lot of work on the program of study initiative, and she actually developed these slides, and it was my omission when I looked at them. I didn't notice that she'd put my name on them, but and not hers, but so kudos to her. But this first slide, we talked yesterday about the 60 by 30 TX plan, and that's the state's strategic higher education plan. But the Texas Workforce Investment Council is also required by statute to complete a workforce plan for the state of Texas, and they recently completed their plan, and their plan runs from 2016 this year to 2023, and the plan is designed to align all of the component sectors in the state of Texas that educate students. And so it involves us, the coordinating board, the Texas Workforce Commission, TEA, the Windham School District, Juvenile Justice, and others. So it's really the component agencies that are involved in that plan. And that plan is used a lot for the operation of WIOA, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. And it's really and truly, how do we shape the state of Texas to be to have a robust economy and train the workforce we need and that kind of stuff. And so I put these goals up here that came out of that plan, primarily because you can see how many times the word program of study appears in the goals. But then also another important piece is industry certifications, align career and technical education program content outcomes with certifications where appropriate. And y'all probably have a level of knowledge about the literature just like I do. It seems like there's a new report every day about the middle skills job gap, the need for a trained workforce, and the impacts on our economy and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what's driving a lot of this conversation at the state level and the national level. And so I put that slide in there primarily to frame the conversation. This slide, I had it in there last year. House Bill 2628 passed the last session. Just in case you want to know and you want to read education code just like we do all the time, it's the next section right after the field of study curriculum. It kind of mirrors some of the field of study stuff. Programs of study establish the degree requirements for associate degrees. These will result in statewide articulation agreements at the community college level. Y'all, we hear stories often of students who take the 3-hour WECM course over here, and that college over there needs the 4-hour version. They enroll in this nursing program here, and they can't transfer to that nursing program there. There's a college, I haven't looked at this in a couple of years, they have an LVN program on this campus and that campus. The one on this campus is 1,400 contact hours long. The one on that campus is 1,800 contact hours long. And so part of this is part of onboarding WECM and then trying to more collaboratively work at the state level to develop programs, kind of like I talked about with the FAA example. Rather than everybody trying to solve it in isolation, let's work more collaboratively together as a system. I know that every community college is a local government entity, but from a workforce point of view at the state of Texas, it's an engine. It's a combined collective engine. The committees, by statute, they're required to be secondary, post-secondary, business and industry. We organize these around the 16 career clusters, and we've talked about this a couple of different times. Mindy mentioned this, but we have to do everything as an open meeting, so we have to have rules that govern how the committee is going to function, what it's going to do, all that kind of stuff. So we're in the process of beginning to field committees around the career clusters, and then we're assuming the career cluster committee will operationalize into the various career pathways or program of study within a career cluster. We've done some preliminary work in health science, and so health science has many different programmatic areas, and so we're just doing the first couple of those meetings. We have one Thursday, right?
Yes, and the program of study cluster. Thank you so much. Sorry. The program of study clusters that are mentioned here on the slide are actually advisory groups. So it's like a cluster advisory group, and then under those clusters, as Gary mentioned, there's various programs that are underneath them. And so like for the Health Science Advisory Committee cluster program of study, there are many programs underneath it. And we just had a meeting the last 2 weeks. We had rehabilitative services, which was for the OTA and PTA programs, and then we had EMT. So, and the other cluster program of study advisory committee is architecture and construction, and they will have their first subcommittee meeting this week, actually on Thursday. It's building construction and technology, and next week is design and documentation.
And so, you know, this slide kind of walks you through that. The larger committees met. We're beginning to do some of the subcommittee work. And so this is another one of those kind of things about resources, and that we're committing as many available resources as we can. We have a bulletin board upstairs that has all the meetings on the month on it laid out, and I almost thought about putting that in as a slide, because literally this month it's my schedule. And you know, as Elizabeth just said, you know, we're down here yesterday and today doing this. We actually get to do a little bit of work tomorrow, I think. I don't think there's... Oh, there is a meeting tomorrow, and then this the next day. So the point is we're working on this. There's a lot of work to be done, but hopefully over the next several years, you're going to see more and more efforts in this space. And I think once we begin to get to the point that we mainstream it, and it's really getting more and more knowledge out there, I think we can maybe accelerate the process. But there's a lot of work to be done. And so, any questions about that? Ryan, Elizabeth, everybody give Elizabeth a hand for putting those slides together. It's that button.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Reinhold Cornelius. I'm Assistant Director in the Division of Academic Quality and Workforce. And part of my charge is to work with the Texas Core Curriculum and work with you on the Texas Core Curriculum. The Texas Core Curriculum is a block of courses, of predominantly lower division courses of 42 semester credit hours. They have the purpose to build the foundation for students for all future learning. And the courses from those 42 semester credit hours are divided into 8 foundational component areas and 1 component area option. And then, besides the definition for the foundational component areas, the core curriculum includes definitions for 6 core objectives, and each course in the core curriculum has to address at least 3 core objectives. And for each course, the core objectives of critical thinking, communication skills are mandatory. Each year, we try to improve the system for the core a little bit to make it a little bit more transparent. Each foundational component area in the core has a transcript number starting with 010 to 090, and those are the numbers which are transcripted on the students' transcripts. Starting the second year of what we call the new core curriculum in 2015, we added a third number to make transparent courses in the component area option, their designation of a foundation component area. So some courses in the component area option are aligned with foundation component area, and they then have a number of 091, 092, and so on. And those who don't have an alignment have the number 090. Now, these numbers were created for transparency, but they're not needed to be transcripted. But we display them on the Web Center. That is our website where we list all core curriculum courses for all institutions by institution. And starting this year, one of those improvements is that we also print that number on our info sheet. So if you change your core curriculum at your institution, you will receive an approval sheet, and we call it the info sheet, and on there we will start listing those numbers so that we have that transparency there as well. Another change we are doing to the core curriculum this year is that we are implementing if you will, a deadline. So in previous years we said each institution has one opportunity each academic year to make a revision, a change to their core curriculum, to add courses to it, and we don't tell you when to do that. You do that to your schedule. What happened last year is that we received, we were surprised to receive requests for revisions up to the end of August. And so, of course, the work of getting that implemented or reviewed went into the next academic year. And so we don't want that to happen. The review process takes roughly 2 months. 1 month for us, 1 month for you to look at what we did and to come back with us to look at it again if you have some additional argumentation. So with that, we say all requests for revisions for core curricula should be given to us by June 30th so that we can finish that year. Another thing we started to do is we received and looked at core curriculum assessment reports. So each institution will, on a continuous basis, assess the attainment of students of the core objectives. They do that continuously, but give the Cohen Board us a report every 10 years. And that report is aligned with the institution's SACS COC report 3.5.1. And so we would receive that assessment report a year before your institution's reaffirmation meeting. And that is done for efficiency and that you can align your assessment accordingly. And however, we want to mention or stress that the SACS COC 3.5.1 report is not a substitute for the core curriculum assessment report that you sent us, because we expect to look at attainment of formational attainment of the core objectives, and not only at the general education outcomes, which are summative. And that's typically what you present to SACS. Then we have been grappling with another issue for the last 2 years. After the implementation of the new core curriculum, we noticed after a while that we had certain courses approved in the core which we should not have had approved. We call these skills development courses. And they are named as because these courses, the purpose of these courses is to improve an individual's or an individual student's skill in a certain topic. Their purpose is not to lay the foundation of all future learning. So most of these courses are actually art courses. Playing the violin or grading pottery is not part of the core curriculum because it's an individual skill which is not part of the definitions for the foundational component areas in the core. Similar is better writing, to become a writer. There is a fundamental difference between writing poetry and analyzing and deconstructing poetry. One is, the latter one is appropriate for the academic work in the core curriculum. Becoming a better writer is not part of the purpose of the core. So we realized that we had these courses, and we talked to our undergraduate education advisory committee for the last 2 years, and we decided to correct that error and take those courses out. Now, there are not that many. There are less than 200 courses of this kind in the overall Texas core curriculum of 10,000 courses. So it's a relatively small number. It's also not equally distributed among institutions. Some are more affected than others, and so that leads to an inequitability between institutions and problems with students if they want to transfer these courses. So that is the main reason that we decided to fix it now. Now, UIAC, our advisory committee, advised us, and that's good advice, to give the institution 2 years to implement it. And so we fix it this year, and then institutions have till fall 2018 to make the changes, the appropriate changes. And this goes hand in hand with what we heard from the ACGM, who also have a 2-year teach-out period. So I think that should work. That's really what I wanted to say. There is a question also about, I forgot to mention, part of these courses are the introductory language courses, which cause a lot of heartburn. And we looked at these courses, and the purpose for the introductory language is the focus of those courses predominantly learning vocabulary, studying basic grammar, and it is not looking at ideas and values of a culture. So we see that with intermediate language courses, a student has enough background knowledge in the language to start looking at original texts and study culture, but that is not possible in the introductory course.
Bear with me 1 minute. I want to read something very quickly. Given that we are increasingly functioning in a multicultural, multinational world, is it not time that we think seriously about whether we can claim to be well educated when we do not speak a language other than English? I do not know any industrialized country in the world where you can get a bachelor's degree and not know a second language. Can we really say that our young people have a complete set of marketable skills without fluency in a second language? You might recognize that as the Commissioner's State of Higher Education in Texas. I'd also contend that the UEAC committee did not vote to remove foreign language from the core. The only thing that they were asked to vote on is what year will it be taken out, either 2017 or 2018. And finally, had you looked at the learning outcomes of the foreign language courses, you might have found that the learning outcomes, for a Spanish example, include identify and discuss traditions, customs, and values of the Hispanic world, and compare and contrast the conditions, customs, and values of the Hispanic world with characteristics of their own culture. So there are things about culture that are in the foreign languages, and had the committee actually looked at learning outcomes and not just the titles of these courses, I think we would have seen a different outcome from the UEAC. Thank you.
Yes, there's no doubt that language has a place, and as I said, intermediate language courses can discuss at a serious level of focus, impact of culture. That is not possible at a beginning language course. And that is similar to mathematics, where you start first semester at the university with algebra. If you're not ready to do algebra, you do high school math and developmental courses. That's equivalent to introductory language courses, where you learn the first 800 words in the first grammar. And with the second year of language study, you can start to actually read texts and documents and start to discuss impact on culture.
Okay, brief, because we need to move on.
Brief is, you need to look at the assessments that are going on at all the colleges. Gary, I have one other question. In the letter that Rex sent out, it said that if a institution chooses not to submit the skills development, will be withdrawn from the list of the core curriculum courses. The withdrawal of a course from the list will be done in fall of 2018. I think for those of us who are considering not resubmitting, we need to know how that process is going to work.
Oh. The way the discussion sounds right now, it's that these courses are a done deal. They're going to be pulled out of the core. But the memo that came out to us said that we could reapply. Is the reapplication going to be taken seriously, and what criteria would be successful if we were to reapply? Because I'd hate to have faculty go through all the processes of trying to build the case and then it not going to be accepted.
The For community colleges, the ACGM, the purpose of the ACGM is the predominant factor here. And so I don't see the application for those courses changing the issue of this.
I think the distinction is made between 2018 and then what happens in 2017 about reapplication. Okay, so the decision that was made was to remove in 2 years so that they would be taken out in fall of 2018. So if you still want them in for the next 2 years, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, Reinhold, but I thought that some of that language about reapplication was due to the delay, which is certainly justified, to the 2018. And maybe we just need to go back and look at that and clarify this for you. And you know, and I think the commissioner's remarks are well taken about foreign language, although the United States has had a long history of being able to get degrees without a foreign language. Bachelor's of Science degrees have been that way for ever since I can remember. And the institution that I got my Bachelor of Arts degree from did not require a foreign language, interestingly enough, even though it billed itself as the Harvard of the Southwest. So, go figure. But on the other hand, I mean, I think we also need to be very careful about trying to always utilize the core for what might otherwise well be an institutional requirement. You know, and so if the state of Texas decides that foreign language is that important, then it may be that every institution needs to require a foreign language. And so, again, I think sometimes we need to be very careful about trying to utilize the core as a way of building in all of our institutional requirements, when if it's that important to an institution, then maybe we need to do it otherwise. It's somewhat reminiscent of the arguments about time to degree that I've had with one of my very good friend. And his argument is that, you know, students need to be allowed to explore and that kind of thing. And it's one of those things, and I think there's some validity to that, but if as an institution you believe that your students ought to be allowed to explore, then you ought to be building in free electives into every one of your degree programs so they can do just that. That's not necessarily a reason for them to go beyond 120 hours or degree plans to go beyond 60 or 120. So some of this boils down to a question of priorities, but we'll go back and look at the language again and send something out if we need to clarify what we meant by all that. Okay.
High schools do have a 2-credit requirement called languages other than English requirement. So if the AP credit rolls in, where are we supposed to put it? Because and place for it in the core, I need an answer for it.
Well, as I said, the core is 42 hours out of a 60-hour degree. So there's another 18 hours that you can find a place for it.
Not if we get the pathways that are showing up the way they are. There's no in the fields of study are not including foreign languages.
I think Mexican American does.
I think that she might have just said what I was getting ready to say.
We'll take a look at that.
If we're looking at field study curricula, lots of times there's just no room left there. Now, if we have a multidisciplinary studies degree, very easy to build in foreign language, but if we're going after a field of study curriculum, lots of times we just can't do that. And so I think the core is still a good place to consider having that, because English is not as ascendant a language internationally as it used to be. I think more and more it's going to be important that our students be able to converse in other languages. So.
Okay, in the interest of time, obviously there's more conversation on this one, but we need to keep going forward. Jennifer.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, good morning. How's everybody? Okay, great.
All right. My name is Jennifer Nalos. I am a program director here in AQW, and I'm here to talk to you about the Texas Affordable Baccalaureate Expansion Grant Program, or the TAB grant. As you might be aware, we already have 2 recognized Texas Affordable Baccalaureate degrees, one at South Texas College and another at Texas A&M Commerce. And through some donor support and the College for All Texans Foundation, we were able to release a request for applications this spring to entertain applications for institutions to develop additional affordable baccalaureate degrees. We were able to award 2 awards this summer, and we put a second call out because we received even more donor support. So our second request for applications is up on the website right now with a deadline of November 18th, and we will be able to award up to 6 applicants. And we are asking that the principal applicant be an institution that offers and awards a baccalaureate degree, but we're really interested in seeing how institutions can partner with community colleges and other institutions across the state to offer innovative ways that students can complete a degree that, with the target of it being $15,000, and able to complete the entire curriculum in 3 years or less. So thinking about how those courses are structured and offering things in the summer, et cetera. And that institutions should consider incorporating competency-based education as a design element. And all of the awarded institutions will have support and guidance from the Institute for Competency-Based Education out of Texas A&M Commerce. And the awards will be $170,000 with a 1-to-1 matching requirement, and it will be given, you'll have 2 years from the date of award through the end of the funding to design and develop and implement the affordable baccalaureate degree of your application's choice. Are there any questions about this program?
Okay, we just made up a minute, I think.
Yeah.
Donna.
Good morning, I'm Donna Carlin. I'm the Assistant Director for Workforce. I have 2 topics that I'll be talking about today. The first will be the Uniform Pre-Nursing Curriculum Advisory Committee, and then I'll talk about Perkins. And I've been warned that I need to talk fast, especially because I have a lot of slides for Perkins, and I will try to get through them as fast as I can. House Bill 3078 directed the coordinating board to appoint an advisory committee to look at the pre-nursing curriculum. The advisory committee, as designated by the statute, was required to have at least 3 members representing community colleges, 3 from universities and health science centers, as well as nursing organizations. The committee met 5 times in Austin. The committee was charged with making recommendations for prerequisite courses that a student must complete to qualify for consideration of admission. I think you all know how difficult the admissions process is for nursing programs and how competitive it is, and also the content of the prerequisite courses. I will say now that the courses that were identified by the committee, all of them selected to use the courses from the Academic Course Guide Manual. So in preparing to do its work, the committee had to assess what prerequisite courses were required by every nursing program. So a survey was done, and we were pleased to say that we had 100% participation with completion of that survey, which there was a lot of follow-up and a lot of nagging, but we thought that was a great response. Also, the ability of a student to use course credit earned at one institution to qualify for consideration of admission at another institution. And I can say that 100% of the respondents said that everyone accepted credit taken at another institution. So a report is due on December 1st to the legislature. This report was just approved by our board at last week's board meeting and will go forward to the legislature by the due date. So what was found, the recommendations for Baccalaureate programs are listed here. There were 7, AMP1 with lab, AMP2 with lab, micro with lab, chemistry with lab, general psychology, human growth and development, and math statistics, which was Math 1342. You'll see that there's asterisks by the biology and chemistry. I know this is long, but basically it comes down that there are 2 institutions, 2 baccalaureate programs that no longer offer a lab for chemistry or microbiology. And so, although with lab was the recommendations, this note says that if students transfer to your institutions that did not have a lab for those courses, that you should accept the credit, and also a recommendation for a cross-disciplinary study to determine whether or not those labs are needed for a student to be successful in a nursing program. And then the recommendations for associate degree nursing, there were 2, anatomy and physiology 1, and English 1301. And you may be saying to yourself, there are a lot more courses that are taken, but they aren't necessarily taken prior to admission. Sometimes they're taken once a student's been admitted, they'll take them, and sometimes they're taken concurrently with the rest of the nursing curriculum. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. Next.
Donna, why don't you briefly talk about the nursing field of study meeting from last week?
Okay.
Mindy alluded to this earlier, but it's probably merits additional details since it happened since all these materials were put together.
Yeah, I think that having this committee, the Uniform Pre-Nursing Curriculum, was really helpful in being followed by the Field of Study Curriculum for Nursing Advisory Committee. The work was done in one day, which I was around when the first Field of Study was approved, and it took about, I hate to say 2 years, but it took a really long time. The committee was, one of the things about the existing field of study that's been, a criticism has been that the committee back then in the early 2000s looked at the curriculum for RN to BSN and included all of those nursing courses. This committee was charged with, this is a generic student that wants a baccalaureate degree that will start at a community college and take their first 2 years, and the consideration of all of those associate degree nursing programs was not done. So I think that really helped facilitate the work of the committee, and it truly is, those first 2 years. At this point, there were 52 hours identified, but that does include a lot of the component areas of the core, which will need to be looked at by Rex, I think, before this goes forward. So, yes? No, there are no RNSG courses at all.
And this is the first work in nursing, if you will, because this is the field of study, which is the transfer pathway. And then there will be more work, programs of study for ADN nursing. And then there's a possibility of having another conversation about ADN to BSN at some time in the future. So this is just kind of step one of many pieces of a puzzle.
Okay, next I'm going to talk about Perkins reauthorization. I know I've been presenting to this group for the last several years, and I've had nothing to report on reauthorization. So now I do have something to report, although I might have gone a little crazy with the slides, so I will go through them rapidly. As you know, the Perkins Act was signed in 2006, signed into law for 6 years, and if you do the math, we're now 10 years into it. Now in its 10th year, funding has been continually reauthorized every year since 2013. We were just notified last week that we've been cut $147,000 for 2016-2017, so don't fret though, that won't come out of any of your school's allocations. That will come from our admin at the coordinating board, and that's due to sequestration. The odd thing is we usually get the money back. It's never been this large though. I think last year it was $61,000, so it makes some complicating budgeting, but hopefully we will get that money back. If not, we've already accounted for it. What I want to talk briefly about today is the congressional landscape for Perkins reauthorization, House efforts, Senate efforts, and then what's next for Perkins. I do want to give thanks to Steve Wojtek. He's in the government relations at Advanced CTE, and that's the organization that is comprised of state directors for Perkins, and he gave permission to use any of his slides as often as I wanted to. So the congressional landscape, as you know, there has been significant political polarization and gridlock. I think that I wrote this, I developed these slides earlier. The legislative days left for the 114th Congress, I believe, have ended. I don't know if anything will happen in the lame duck session. I don't think anyone thinks that there will, because of course the election has taken center stage. The two committees from the House and Senate, they've been focused primarily on the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, during the 2016 calendar year. We've been hearing for at least the last 3 or 4 years that WIOA would be passed first, then ESSA, and then Perkins. So now here we are, and Perkins, there has been some start happening to this. We don't know what implications may come, of course, from the elections.
Donna, if I just, you may know, Every Child Succeed Act is the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, just in case.
There has been movement, of course, with the House bill being introduced and passed, but things have been held up with the Senate because of a key issue regarding secretarial authority, or the authority of the U.S. Secretary of Education. The same language was put into the House bill, or I'm sorry, into the Senate bill that was in the ESSA bill, but Republicans want it kept in and Democrats are opposed to it. So the reauthorization efforts from the House, there have been 5 Perkins-related hearings since 2013. This has led to the House bill being introduced, 5587. It is 88 pages. I would encourage you to look at it if you have a lot of time, but it's called Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act. It's the product of bipartisanism and committee-level negotiations. This bill was introduced by Representative Glenn Thompson from Pennsylvania and Representative Catherine Clark from Massachusetts. One is a Republican, the other is a Democrat. Markup was done, and the full House approved it 405 to 5 votes, which I thought was great. The main themes of this are primarily maintaining the structure of Perkins 4. There is a lot of alignment with both ESSA and WIOA, strengthening labor market alignment of CTE programs, significant devolution or rolling down of federal authority over states. There is supposedly the state plan requirements are a lot less, as well as your local plans. So the similar rolling down for state to local authority as well. And of course, strengthening linkages between planning and spending, which those of you in the room that are Perkins directors know that we've got a big head start on that because we've been doing that for many years. The purposes of the Act stay largely the same: academic and technical skill acquisition via CTE programs and programs of study, alignment, again, with high skill, high wage, and high demand occupations, dissemination of best practices, more state and local flexibility, and technical assistance and professional development, and emphasis on that. There are some key definitional changes, which primarily have to do with consistency with both WIOA and the ESSA as well. But you can see there what they are. As far as the allocation goes, there is in the House bill, as I said, and I also want to emphasize, this is just the very beginning of a really long process. So there may be changes that come along as we move forward. But basically, the The state to local formulas would stay the same. The state admin will still be 5% with a match required. State leadership would still be 10%. Correction set aside moves from 1% to 2%. This is the big differences in reserve funding, and that's an increase of 10% to 15%. And I've mentioned in other presentations that we have really begun to use our reserve. This year, the coordinating board contributed $1 million to the Tri-Agency Council for the development of new CTE early college high schools, and that's in conjunction with TWC and TEA. But they're not called early college high schools, they're called, Rex, help me on this, Innovative Academies? Yeah, okay. Okay, no significant changes as far as accountability goes, except for at the secondary level. There is some controversy about their concentrators, and then I meant to write this word down, and I knew I'd forget it. Students that are trying out a CTE major, they have a definition. No, it's not participant, it's a new word. Something like explorers.
I think it's explorers.
Yeah, yes. For post-secondary, there's no significant change in the, as far as concentrators go. Right now, it's 12 hours. On the second bullet, completed such a program if the program encompasses fewer than 12 hours or the equivalent in total. What the language we have now is that terminates in an industry-recognized credential, certificate, or degree. Some changes in terminology for post-secondary indicators. Placement is there. It's currently there as well. Median earnings in the second quarter after completion of those employed. Again, attainment of a recognized post-secondary credential, and percentage of concentrators in programs that lead to non-traditional fields. That would replace the 5P1 and 5P2, which is the non-traditional participation and completion. As far as accountability goes, I think I've mentioned that more. An easier process is for the states. You'll see the last bullet there, the ability of the feds and states to withhold funds for missed targets is eliminated and focuses on improvement plans and technical assistance, which we've pretty much, that's what we've been doing. Emerging themes from this, I won't go over all of them, but you see a lot of the words that we think of now that we also see in WIOA, the secondary and post-secondary connections, performance and accountability, coordinated planning and spending. I'm sorry, I was behind. So, what's next? Lame duck session post-elections, the House bill that has significant support. What we don't know is now what will happen with the Senate. How will November's election have an impact on the timeline, and what a final product will look like? Of course, we don't know, since we haven't seen the Senate version of the bill yet. This is a slide you may be familiar with. I use it. It is my favorite slide. It gives the portion of funds that are awarded to TEA. Of course, is 70% of the allocation for Perkins. The coordinating board gets 30%. We're still running about the same that we have been at approximately $27 million. 10% can be used for leadership, 5% for administration. The rest is for basic, with 10% of reserve being able to be used in basic. The next slide are the Perkins Leadership Grants. You'll have them to look at. They're just getting started as of the new year. And any questions?
How many slides do we have left, Sissy?
I do.
You're good. As Doug comes on up, and we're on pace to make it, I think an important message, Donna almost was, I think she alluded to it, but you almost had it laid out to you, where we talk about the tri-agency initiative here in Austin. And that's obviously us, TEA and TWC, but you're seeing it in the federal legislation as well, with alignment of WIOA, Every Child Succeed Acts, and then some of the conversation about what's being incorporated into Perkins. And so this school to work philosophy, if you will, is kind of a common theme, both at the state level and the national level. Doug?
morning. Let's see. Yeah, my name is Doug Jansen. I'm a program director with AQW, and I'm here to talk to you this morning about House Bill 1992 and the resulting AP study and report. In 2015, the 84th Texas Legislature passed House Bill 1992. This bill requires each institution of higher education to grant course credit for a minimum score of 3 on advanced placement examinations. That is, examinations they accept at their institutions, unless a chief academic officer of the institution determines that a higher score, that's a 4 or a 5, is needed, and the wording, I put it on the slide so we can all read along, is needed to indicate that a student is sufficiently prepared to be successful in a related, more advanced course for which the lower division course is a prerequisite. Okay? The chief academic officer may make this determination, but this decision must be based on evidence. House Bill 1992 went into effect this fall 16. Okay. House Bill 1992 also requires that the coordinating board conduct a study and issue a report to the legislature that compares academic performance, retention rates, graduation rates of students who received AP credit. They like this disaggregated by score, and they would like it compared to students who completed a lower division coursework at the institution. There's a progress report that has currently been approved by the board and is being submitted to the legislature, and then the full report will be due in 19. All right. To conduct the study, the coordinating board staff has made 3 separate requests for information. 2 of these requests focused on institutional crosswalks. One in the fall of 13, and the other which was to go into effect this fall of 2016. As part of the second request, chief academic officers at each institution were required to sign a statement attesting that their institution was in compliance with the statute. That is, that if they required a 4 or a 5, they had the evidence to back it up. Okay. A third request involved student-level course data for a first-time in college cohort in 2013. Whoops. We'll go back one. Okay. A second similar request for student-level course data will go out for the current first-time in college 2016 cohort once that information is available. Okay. This data will be matched against data from the College Board and will enable staff to conduct the study and fulfill this mandate from House Bill 1992. At its October meeting, the coordinating board approved a progress report for this AP study. The progress report contained a very few initial findings that I'd like to share with you today. And I know in the interest of time, I'm going to go really fast through these. So the slides will be in your slide pack. Okay. The survey, and one of the most interesting things we saw was that the survey of 2013 crosswalks shows that 31 CTCs out of 54 and 5 universities out of 35 accepted a score of 3 on all AP examinations that they accepted credit for. In 2016, these numbers improved. 44 community and technical colleges and 19 universities said they would award credit for a 3 on all AP exams that they accepted. All but 2 institutions have submitted statements of compliance signed by the CAO certifying that their institutions are in compliance. First request for student-level course data indicated that 17,986 students at 4-year institutions claimed credit for over 67,000 courses based on their AP exam achievement. 2,759 students at CTCs claimed course credit for almost 6,000 courses, 5,800 courses. In total, 20,745 students claimed and were awarded credit for 73,750 courses. The median number of courses for which credit was awarded at 4-year institutions was 3. The median number of courses at community and technical colleges was 2 per student. Statewide, the 10 subject areas that saw the greatest awarding of course credit were, in order, English, history, Spanish, math, which includes statistics, physics, government, chemistry, biology, economics, and psychology. And the numbers are up there to kind of let you look at those. Other initial findings are included in the progress report, but again, I want to remind you these are only preliminary findings. The 2019 study will present a more detailed analysis and a breakdown of student performance measures. Okay. Finally, HB 1992 instructed the coordinating board to make recommendations as part of the progress report currently submitted. A recommendation has been forwarded to the legislature, and it reads, upon awarding course credit for an AP exam, Texas public institutions of higher education should document the AP exam subject title and score corresponding to each course for which credit is awarded. This recommendation is made because as we requested information, we found that many institutions do not retain this information. Okay? As statute requires institutions to support scores when they want something higher than a 3, it may not only be helpful, but indeed necessary to collect and retain this information. Okay. All right, if you have any questions, you can contact me or my colleague, Dr. Melissa Humphreys, who works in SPF. We're working together to put this report together for 19. Okay. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Mindy. Only 2 more sections, Joe.
And good morning yet again. I will click through these fairly quickly here. I'm giving you a T-STEM update, by the way. I should have made note of that. Here you see the authorizing legislation. You see a history of our funding and the purpose of the grant. Maximum scholarships, institutional eligibility, initial and continuing. I'm going to come back to continuing institutions in a minute because we've gotten some interesting data from our eligibility testing for continuing eligibility. But you see what it takes to be a T-STEM institution initially and continuing. And I'll stick on this last bullet for a minute. Institutional awards in the T-STEM grant are non-competitive. If you apply and you're eligible, you are awarded. The amount awarded is generally proportional to the size of your STEM student body. In some cases, there are exceptions to that. Some institutions have deliberately kept their programs small because they feel that they can manage better a smaller program. And I'll go on to the next screen here, and here's our 2017 and 18 academic year 17 and academic year 18 honor roll. We have a record number, 23 institutions participating in the T-STEM grant program this year, awarding scholarships to students in specified STEM fields. Now, the little number 1 symbols, there are 7 of them there. These are institutions that began with the T-STEM program the first year we awarded funds in FY13 and continue through today. Some of you are in this audience today. Now, the ones with the green stars are our greenies, our newbies. They are awarded for the first time this year. We have 5 new, and we're very proud of that. And here's a little history of what we've done so far. I'll point out a couple of things about it. One, $25 million is not represented here. That's more than 25 what we've awarded over the years. We have plowed unexpended funds that were returned to us back into awards. And I'll point out the big thing. For the first time, we have 2-year awards. There's a reason for that. We have a $7 million approximate balance, and we have committed that to these 2 years. We are at work seeking resources to replenish that fund, but in the meantime, we wanted institutions to have the opportunity in advance to plan to fund those 2-year students whom they grant initial scholarships to. So that explains that. Now, let me take you to a final screen here. 16 T-STEM institutions stood for continued eligibility testing this past year. In other words, we needed to know that 70% of their students were either continuing in higher ed or had entered the workforce. And these are the numbers we get. Unduplicated students awarded in 13-14, that's only for these 2 years. Nearly 2,900 students across the state majoring in STEM fields. Still enrolled in secondary after 1 year, 66.3. Employed in the Texas workforce, 70.3. That's more than 100%. College students do enter the workforce while they're in school. But I'm going to end with this percentage here, this wonderful number here. Overall, unduplicated success for T-STEM scholars over those 2 years, nearly 88%. And I turn the credit back to you colleges who are T-STEM institutions. You have made that happen. Okay, and thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Mindy. Okay, other than Elizabeth putting my name on those other slides, this is all I had planned to do myself. This is House Bill 1583. I'm going to go through this in basically a minute, allocate myself as much time as I did Jessica. But you're supposed to have 5 programs. You should have already communicated those to us. You should have already been enrolling those fall 2016. We're required to submit a report to the legislature by November 1 of 2018. I think we've talked about this. We did the block scheduling workshop back in February. Many of y'all attended and so forth. We're going to be sending a communication soon from Julie's group, I can't think of their name right now, asking for the students enrolled in block courses. This will be a separate data reporting kind of thing. It'll be done through an Excel spreadsheet or something similar. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen on that yet. I'm working with Doug Parker on that. There will be a similar request for the semesters before the report is due. For our point of view, what we've discussed internally initially is once you report a student as being a block student, we will continue to track them from all of the other data reports and use that to put the report together. So, you know, even if a student drops out of the block, if they were initially in the block, they're a block student. And so somehow that report will come together. That information should be coming out soon. I actually have the form on my desk right now to go to the data committee, and it's waiting Rex's signature, and so we're close on that, so you'll be seeing that before the end of the semester. But that's the most important piece here. Any questions about that? And that's pretty miraculous that we're only a couple of minutes behind our schedule. Where did Rex go? Is he hiding back there? Yeah. Okay, I guess any final questions about any topics we haven't talked about? My observation is y'all are not nearly as glazed over this time as you were last year, so maybe that's good. But Rex, final comments from you or anything?
Oh, just thank everybody for being here. We hope that this has proven to be useful and helpful to you and informative. It's certainly proven to be useful and helpful and informative to us. So there's some takeaways that we have from this that we'll work on as we go forward. We did change the format around, and so we would also like to know, I think, especially for those of you who were here last year and experienced the previous format, about which one you think works better, and also about any topics of interest and that kind of thing for when we do the next one of these. Of course, the next one will be after a legislative session, so there may be, except for I'm pretty sure that we can report now that there will be no new money. Other than that, there may very well be changes. You know, one of the things that legislatures do when it's very clear that there is no money, then they begin to think about all the things they can do that don't require money. Now, and what they mean by that is it doesn't require them to have any money. It may require you to have some money, or it may require us to have some money, but that's a different issue. So that should be interesting. And as I said yesterday, sometime tonight, we will know whether the American dream of anybody can become president is really true after all. And you can take from that whatever political statement you want to take from it. All right. So thank you for being here.
And thank y'all.